Trial resumed. Jury not present.
The court said, "Good morning."
All counsel said, "Good morning, Your Honor."
The court said, "Would you make your appearances, please?"
Mr. Finkel said, "Good morning, Your Honor." Ryan Finkel, Juliana Murray, Micah Ferguson, and Justin Horton will be joining us momentarily for the government, and we're joined by Isabel Loftus, who is a paralegal in our office.
Mr. Kamraju said, "Good morning, Your Honor." Siddhartha Kamraju and Sabrina Shroff, along with Mr. Guo, who is with us at counsel's table.
The court said, "Please be seated. Is there anything before we continue with the witness?"
Mr. Kamraju said, "Not from the defense, Your Honor."
Mr. Finkel said, "There's one logistical item. We're just waiting to hear if the defense believes it to be an issue. Aside from that, so we don't want to bother Your Honor with it if it's not. Aside from that, nothing from the government."
The court said, "All righty. So if you'll have the witness on the witness stand at 9:29. Thank you."
All counsel said, "Thank you."
Recess.
The court said, "Please be seated and please get the jurors."
Jury present.
The court said, "Please be seated. Good morning, jurors."
The juror said, "Good morning."
The court said, "Welcome back. We're going to continue with the cross-examination of the witness. Please remember that you're still under oath."
The witness said, "Yes, Your Honor."
The court said, "You may inquire."
Mr. Kamraju said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Margaret Murphy resumed. Cross-examination continued. By Mr. Kamraju.
"Good morning, Special Agent Murphy.
Good morning.
Now we were talking about the Sherry Netherland on Friday, correct?"
Correct.
Now the Sherry Netherland, it's a luxury hotel, right?
Yes.
It's pretty opulent, right?
Yes.
And the 18th floor was the premises that you were going to search that day, right?
Correct.
And the 18th floor is one apartment that takes up the whole floor, right?
Correct.
And that's where Mr. Guo and his family lived, right?
I don't know that to be true.
Okay. That's where Mr. Guo was located that day, right?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, "All right. Now could we pull up Government Exhibit SH207, please? And I think it's in evidence so we can put it up for everybody. Now this is the diagram of the apartment, correct?"
Correct.
Now there's numbering, or lettering, I guess, on each of the rooms, right?
Yes.
So each room was assigned a particular letter combination.
Yes.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the highest one that I see is BB, which is up by the den at the north side. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So whether I missed one or not, safe to say that there were nearly 30 rooms in this apartment. Right?
Nearly, yes.
And they were all furnished, correct?
Some of those rooms were closets that I wouldn't classify as furnished. But in general the place was furnished, yes.
Okay. Fair enough. The rooms that could be furnished were furnished, right?
Yes.
Got it. Now I believe you testified on direct that you entered the apartment from an elevator bay. Right?
Yes.
Okay. On the diagram, can you tell us where that elevator bay would have been?
So the elevator bay is in the center of the apartment, where it says service elevator lobby.
Okay. That's the one that you came up on.
I don't recall exactly which elevator that I came up on.
Okay. Are there multiple elevators that led out into the apartment?
I don't recall.
Okay. I think you testified on direct on Friday that it would take several minutes to walk from one end of the apartment to the other. Right?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, "Can we pull up Government Exhibit SH28, which is also in evidence? Please publish it." You recall testifying about this photograph on direct?
Yes.
And this is the photograph of the cell phone under the mattress, right?
Correct.
Now you have no idea when the cell phone was placed under the mattress, right?
Sorry. I didn't hear that.
You have no idea when the cell phone was placed under the mattress, right?
No, I don't know.
Okay. You have no idea how it came to be under the mattress, right?
Well, I know that it was found during the arrest and clear of the residence.
Sure. You know when it was found, right?
Right.
You don't know who put it there, for example, right?
I don't know how it got there, no.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. And can we look back at Government Exhibit SH207 again? Now I think you testified on direct that this cell phone that we were just looking at was found in room P. Right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's the master bedroom?
Correct.
Got it. Now I think on direct you also testified about something called a knock and announce search. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just remind us what that is?
A knock and announce is something the FBI would typically do to announce our presence prior to entering a premises that we're executing an arrest or a search warrant on.
Got it. So there's a period of time when you let the person come to the door, is that right?
During a knock and announce, yes.
Okay. Typically how long is that period?
It depends, but could be 15 to 20 seconds.
Okay. 15 to 20 seconds before the FBI enters, is that?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Now you didn't enter the apartment until after Mr. Guo was arrested and the apartment was cleared. Right?
Correct.
So if there were a knock and announce, it happened before you got there, right?
Correct.
Mr. Kamraju said, all right. Now can we pull up Government Exhibit SH-135, please? All right. And I think this is in evidence as well, so we can publish it. This is another one of the photographs you took during the search.
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. And maybe we can just blow it up at the top, the post-it. Okay. Can you just read that?
Sure. It says, Room Y. Multiple phones. Under bed. And then there's two names I can't make out.
Don't worry about the names. Okay. All right. And it says Room Y at the top there, right?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. So let's go back to 207. Now can you find Room Y on the diagram?
Yes. It's the dressing room.
Okay. Now when it refers to dressing room, is that basically like a walk-in closet?
From what I recall, yeah, it was similar to what a walk-in closet would look like.
Mr. Kamraju said, all right. Now let's pull up Government Exhibit SH-156, please. All right. This is another photograph that you took, right?
Yes.
And you see the document at the top there?
Yes.
That's a Hong Kong International Driving Permit, right?
Yes.
And it's from 2015, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, all right. Now could we pull up Government Exhibit SH-157, please? All right. Do you see that?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. And everybody's got that on their screen? Okay, good. Now on the top of this photograph, that's the permit we saw in GXSH-156, right?
The photo we just looked at.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. Can we, on the top right portion of the permit, maybe we can just blow that up? Above the photograph. Okay. Could you read that, please?
Sure. It says Kwok. Ho-Wan. China. October 5, 1968. Majestic View Manor 20 South Bay Road HK, Hong Kong.
Mr. Kamaraju said, all right. We can zoom out of that. Could we put that back up, please, 157. All right. If we can just zoom out on this document, please. Now you see there's another document below it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And these two documents were found in roughly the same place.
Yes.
All right. And the document that's below, that's the Hong Kong exit and entry permit, is that right?
Correct.
Mr. Kamaraju said, all right. Now could we blow up the bottom right corner of that document, please? All right. Do you see the date of issue?
Yes.
What's that date?
April 12, 2010.
And do you see the date of expiry?
Yes.
What's that date?
October 11, 2010.
Now there was no U.S. driver's license for Mr. Guo recovered during the search, right?
I don't recall there being one, no.
Okay.
The court said, get closer to the microphone. Thank you.
Mr. Kamaraju said, oh, sorry, Your Honor. And you certainly didn't take any photographs of U.S. driver's licenses for Mr. Guo, right?
I don't recall, but yeah.
Okay. And there's no U.S. driver's permit found for Mr. Guo in the apartment, correct?
I don't recall there being one.
Mr. Kamaraju said, okay. No further questions, Your Honor. Witness.
The court said, redirect?
Mr. Finkel said, nothing further. Thank you.
The court said, you may step out. Thank you.
The witness said, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Witness excused.
The court said, and the prosecution may call its next.
Mr. Horton said, the government calls Giacomo Mattioli.
The law clerk said, please pull the microphone very close to your face and raise your right hand.
Witness sworn.
The law clerk said, thank you.
The court said, please be seated. State your name and spell it. Also draw the microphone close to you.
The witness said, my name is Giacomo Mattioli, spelled G as in George, Iacomo, and the last name is Mattioli.
The court said, you may inquire.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor.
Giacomo Mattioli, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Mr. Horton.
Good morning, Mr. Mattioli.
Good morning.
What do you do for work?
I have a Ferrari dealership.
And how many Ferrari dealerships do you have?
3.
Where are your Ferrari dealerships located?
California.
Where in California?
Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, and Westlake.
And Mr. Mattioli, what is Passion Rosa, LLC?
It is the legal entity that owns Ferrari Beverly Hills.
How long have you been selling Ferraris, Mr. Mattioli?
25 years.
Where is Ferrari headquartered in Italy?
Maranello.
What relationship, if any, do your Ferrari dealerships have with Ferrari in Italy?
I am Ferrari official franchise dealer.
And what does it mean to be an official franchise dealer for Ferrari?
Well, we have a franchise agreement in place, so we represent the factory in the market. So we have the ability to purchase a new car at the discount price and we retail them.
You said, we represent the factory in the market. What's the factory?
Well, we represent, technically, Ferrari North America, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Ferrari SPA, which is the factory in Italy, yeah.
And what does the factory refer to?
The Ferrari SPA, yes, the Italian company.
And what sorts of dealings, if any, do you have with Ferrari SPA in Italy?
Well, I have some dealings with some special cars that we purchase directly through them.
And what do you mean by special cars?
Typically not street-legal car, purposely built for the racetrack, so race cars.
What does it mean for a car not to be street-legal?
It means that it does not comply with the rules and regulations and the homologations that are required to be street-legal car.
And where can a car, where can a Ferrari that's not street legal be driven?
On the racetrack, typically.
Mr. Mattioli, at your Ferrari dealerships, what are consignment services?
Consignment, it's a form of an agreement that we enter with the seller and that, expressed a desire to sell his car, and we work together, advising him on the best marketing tactics to sell the car and the price point of selling the car.
And what's the purpose of selling a Ferrari through consignment?
Typically you maximize the return to the owner, to the buy, to the seller,
Mr. Mattioli, what is Ferrari Corse Clienti?
It's a department within the Ferrari factory.
And could you spell that for the court reporter and the jury, Corse Clienti?
Sure. C-O-R-S-E, and then separate word, Clienti, C-L-I-E-N-T-I.
What does Corse Clienti mean?
Racing client.
Racing client? You said Corse Clienti is a department in Ferrari. What does Corse Clienti do?
They are in charge to organize and promote this program. Several programs they have under their control enhance the Ferrari client experience. They sell purposely racetrack-built vehicles. And they organize events around the world for the owners to enjoy their vehicles.
Can anybody participate in Ferrari Corse Clienti programming?
No. They need to be selected by the factory, by Ferrari.
And how does somebody get selected by the factory?
Well, I don't really know all the criteria. I know that as a practical. That you submit the name and then they goes on the waiting list, typically there's a waiting list. And then the factory decides who to pick from this list.
Now what is the XX program at Ferrari?
The XX program is under the Corse Clienti department. It's a program to allow the clients to drive the specific vehicle that was built for the racetrack. And it's called FXX.
And what is a Ferrari FXX?
So a Ferrari FXX is a car that was developed based on a street car, the LaFerrari. Ferrari LaFerrari, that's the name on the vehicle. And it was, developed, again, for the racetrack, so they add the roll cage and modify the car in many different ways, and it's, again, built only for the racetrack.
And how fast can a Ferrari FXXK go?
Over 200 miles, yeah.
What training, if any, is required to drive a Ferrari FXXK?
Well, yes. There is training required because you're driving on the racetracks and you need to get familiar with the behavior of a race car. And slick tires and etc., so there are driving schools specifically, designed for that. And Ferrari has a driving school itself.
You referenced slick tires. What do you mean by that?
Oh, the tires developed just for the track, so there are no groove, They have particularly high grip in the turns. They just need to be properly warmed up.
And Mr. Mattioli, if I could just ask you to bring the microphone a little closer to your mouth for the court reporter and the jury.
Okay.
How often, if ever, do the slick tires on a Ferrari FXXK need to be changed out?
Depends a lot from the kind of performance you're looking for because, obviously the newer tires gives you higher performance, but typically you change it. It depends on the number of kilometers you're going to run in a day, but, typically once a day when you're on the track.
And how much do those tires on the FXXK cost?
20, I'm not sure cause I don't sell them directly, but I think it's 2,500.
Mr. Mattioli, about how many Ferrari FXXKs have been manufactured?
Ferrari never disclose a total number. I speculate about 40.
And about how much does a Ferrari FXXK cost?
When it's new or the current price?
Well, what's the range of what a Ferrari FXXK costs?
Currently, right now.
Sure.
I think it's between 6 million to 6.5 million right now.
How are these Ferrari FXXKs bought and sold?
When they're new or pre-owned.
Well, let's start with new. How is a new Ferrari FXXK bought or sold?
Okay. So new, again, Ferrari would launch the car, would unveil the car. And dealers will submit prospects, submit names to the factory, to the Ferrari factory. And they will pick and choose who would get the car.
And how is a pre-owned Ferrari FXXK bought and sold?
Pre-owned, it's a little different. Some cars they come available in the marketplace. They get advertised, but the preferred way for the Ferrari is to sell them through them. And so anybody that has a car that is available for sale should notify the Ferrari factory, the special department. Yeah.
And what's your understanding as to why Ferrari prefers to sell pre-owned FXXKs through Ferrari?
Well, they like to know who's gonna purchase the car, and it's a sort of a club, so, you know. They support the car, then they prepare the car, they store the car. So they just want to know who they're dealing with, yeah.
Mr. Mattioli, have you ever participated in the purchase or sale of a Ferrari FXXK?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you please pull up what's in evidence as the stipulation that's marked GX Stip 8? And if you could please publish it. This is a stipulation regarding documents. It's in evidence. In relevant part. It says that the parties have agreed that the exhibits that are listed in column B of the stipulation were lawfully obtained by the government and are authentic records of the entity listed in column A. That were made at or near the time by, or from information transmitted by, a person with knowledge of the matters set forth in the records. Such records were kept in the course of a regularly conducted activity. And it was the regular practice of that entity to make the records. Ms. Loftus. If you could go to the second page of this stipulation. That's fine. Thanks. And the entity column in A. The second line from the top reads Ferrari SPA. And the exhibits associated are GX801 and GX802. Ms. Loftus. We can go to the third page, third numbered paragraph, please. It says, the parties further agree that this stipulation, as well as the government exhibits listed in column B, may be received as government exhibits at trial. And Your Honor, at this time pursuant to this stipulation, the government offers GXBR 440 and GX802.
The court said, they are admitted.
Government's Exhibits 802 and BR 440 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please publish GX802?
The court said, is the stipulation itself in evidence?
Mr. Horton said, it is, Your Honor.
The court said, okay.
Mr. Horton said, and can you please publish this and show the witness pages 1 and 2?
By Mr. Horton.
Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
Purchase agreement.
And purchase agreement for what?
For a FXXK EVO.
And what's the date of this purchase agreement?
May 18, 2021.
Mr. Horton said, can you go to the second page, Ms. Loftus? Mr. Mattioli, who has signed the signature line above the seller?
Me.
And what was your role in this transaction, Mr. Mattioli?
I facilitate the transaction. The owner at the time desired to sell his car and I consequently informed the Ferrari factory that, the Corse Clienti program, that we had this car for sale.
Below your signature line on the same page, it says the purchaser and it says Stichting Administratiekantoor Stilweereis. What role did this entity have in the transaction, Mr. Mattioli?
I assume the buyer.
And what is Stichting Administratiekantoor Stilweereis?
No idea.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could please go back to page 1 of the purchase agreement. And if you could blow up the paragraph numbered 1. Mr. Mattioli, could you please read this paragraph?
Sure. This is to confirm our agreement pursuant to which we agree to sell you. And you agree to purchase our vehicle Ferrari FXXK EVO car chassis number 240860, the car, or FXXK, as described on Schedule C.
And Mr. Mattioli, what is chassis number 240860?
It is a VIN. It is a vehicle identification number.
And what is a vehicle identification number?
So every car that's built has this individual number. They're born with it.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could zoom back out and then highlight paragraphs numbered 2 down just above the number 3. And enlarge that, please. Mr. Mattioli, this says the agreed purchase price is $4 million. Do you see that?
Yes.
Below that paragraph it says, the agreed price shall be paid as follows, a non-refundable deposit equal to $500,000. Do you see that?
Yes.
And after that it says that will be paid upon Ferrari Corse Clienti XX program team technical check of the car to forward to the buyer for his approval. What is the XX program team technical check of the car?
It's a pre-delivery inspection to make sure the car is in good condition.
Below that the line says the balance equal to $3.5 million will be done not later than 15th of June 2021. Do you see that?
Yes.
Mr. Mattioli, is this a typical payment structure for this kind of deal?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, could you please go to page 2 and zoom in on paragraph 11? Mr. Mattioli, could you please read this paragraph?
As requested by the car maker, Ferrari SPA. You are requested to sign the Schedule B hereto which governs a certain number of issues regarding, inter alia, warranties, use, transfer concerning the car.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please take us to page 4 of this same exhibit, GX802, and briefly click through pages 4 to 6. Okay. If you could take us back to page 4, please. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is a statement of Ferrari SPA statement.
And what role did this document play in the transaction for the FXXK?
Oh, this is required by them. It's a Schedule B they require to be signed.
And how often in your 25 years dealing with Ferrari have you seen a document like this?
This is only when you deal with special cars like this with Ferrari, the Ferrari statement, yeah.
Under the statement, it says, the undersigned, being the purchaser of the FXXK EVO car. Chassis 240,860 from the seller. Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you enlarge the homologation in paragraph 1, please? While she's doing that, Mr. Mattioli, what is homologation?
Homologation is the term that describes where a car, it's street legal and complies with the rules and regulations of the country where the car is homologated.
And can you please read the first sentence of paragraph 1?
Yes. As stated above, the purchaser understands that the FXXK EVO does not meet current safety and emissions standards for street legal vehicles in any country.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you go to page 5 of this same exhibit, GX802, and please zoom in on the section that says transfer. And Mr. Mattioli, if you could just read the first 2 lines. Start with number 5.
In the event of transfer of the FXXK EVO, the purchaser agrees to immediately inform Ferrari of the identity of the transferee.
And Mr. Mattioli, what is the purpose of this provision?
To inform the factory of any change of ownership, this specific model.
And does Ferrari require that of every car it sells?
No. Again, this is a statement only for the specifically built Corse Clienti cars.
And why does Ferrari require that the Corse Clienti cars, why do they require that the owner notifies them if ownership changes?
Well, I think they want to know, are they dealing with the car most of the time? Store at their facilities.
And why are these cars mostly stored at Ferrari's facilities?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Why are they mostly stored at Ferrari facilities?
Because they are supported by them. So the Ferrari technician they work on the cars are at the factory, the cars gets managed and maintained by them.
Mr. Horton said, and Ms. Loftus, if you could please take us to page 6 of the same exhibit, GX802. And zoom in on the signature line, the date and signature line. Thank you. Mr. Mattioli, whose name appears under the signature line?
Mr. Guo.
And do you know who that is?
No.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could take us to page 20 of this same exhibit, please, GX802. By the way, Mr. Mattioli, the document we looked at earlier referenced an FXXK EVO. What's an FXXK EVO?
It's a special built only for track purposes from the Ferrari factory.
What difference, if any, is there between the FXXK and the FXXK EVO?
Yes. The EVO was the second series of that model. So first they had the FXXK came out. And then the factory produced few additional units and also made available a kit to upgrade the Series 1 cars into an EVO.
Looking at the screen in front of you on page 20 of GX802, Mr. Mattioli. The header says FXXK EVO chassis number 24860. Do you see that?
Yes.
And is that the same chassis number as the one involved in the transaction you handled?
Yes.
And what is depicted on this page of the document?
The car.
And is this the car that was in the transaction you've been testifying about?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you please display what's in evidence as GXBR 440 at page 13? Thank you. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is a receipt of funds.
And who received the funds?
Ferrari Beverly Hills.
And who are the funds sent by?
Fiesta Property Developments Ltd.
What was the date of this wire transfer?
May 26, 2021.
And what were these funds paying for?
This was the deposit for the FXXK EVO 24860.
Do you know if Fiesta Property Developments is?
No.
Mr. Horton said, you can take that down, Ms. Loftus. If you could please put back up what's in evidence as GX802 at page 28. And if you could zoom in on the email that starts about 10% down from the top on page 28. Mr. Mattioli, what is this email?
This is an email from me to an executive at Ferrari SPA.
And who is Adalberto Catabriga?
He's the gentleman in charge of the special sales within the course clienti.
What's the date of this email?
June 15, 2021.
What's the subject line?
FXXK EVO chassis 24860.
The email starts, Dear Cata, thank you for your email and your time on the phone. While we understand that the delay in closing has been caused by factory's inspection, we are currently facing a buyer's default as per agreement. What's a buyer's default, Mr. Mattioli?
When the buyer doesn't fulfill his obligation according to an agreement.
And what was your purpose in sending this email on June 15th?
Well, soliciting the, conclusion and the funding and the successful completion of the transaction.
Can you please read the email addresses that you sent this email to?
Catabriga, Adalberto, adalberto.catabriga@ferrari.com. Alex Sultani, asultani@skyviewcapital.com.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Mattioli. You can just read the name next to the email address, unless there isn't one.
Oh, okay. Bali, Francesco, Gandini, Matteo.
And what is the last email address?
There is no name.
Okay. And it says ukistrohome@gmail.com?
Yes, correct.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Ms. Loftus. Can you please put up just for the witness and the parties what's marked as GXBR 1604? Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is an email that I received.
And what date did you receive this email?
It says June 15, 2021.
What relationship, if any, does this email have to the one we just looked at that you sent that day?
It's a reply from this guy to my email.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government offers GXBR 1604.
Ms. Strofa said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit BR 1604 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could zoom in to the top of the email, please, the first email in the chain.
By Mr. Horton.
Who is this email to you sent from, Mr. Mattioli?
Can you repeat the question?
Who sent you this email on June 15th?
It says milesinukistrohome@gmail.com.
And can you just read the email that he sent you that day?
Sure. Dear all, I don't understand this email. We are trying our best to be patient and move the deal forward ASAP. We've been waiting to pay the rest of the invoice for weeks. I understand the factory's delay and I am very supportive to Ferrari. However, seeing this email from Ferrari Beverly Hills is very unpleasant. No one is trying to default anything here.
And Mr. Mattioli, what, if anything, was your reaction to receiving this email?
I don't really remember.
And what, if anything, did you understand was the sender's role in the transaction?
I didn't. I was surprised, I think, to receive this.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please put up what's marked as GXBR 802? It's in evidence. And at page 27. And if you could zoom in on the email from Mr. Catabriga to Mr. Mattioli and the others. Mr. Mattioli, this is an email you received the same day, Tuesday, June 15, 2021. Do you see that?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, and Ms. Loftus. If you can attach, if you can zoom into the paragraphs having said that, and please sign the statement here. Mr. Mattioli, the paragraph in the middle says, having said that. I am attaching a statement confirming the deadline for the balance on Friday, June 18, 2021. The operations for the transfer of the FXXK car to Switzerland will begin as early as tomorrow morning as per contract. Mr. Mattioli. Why was the FXXK car in this transaction transferred to Switzerland?
The car was under a bond.
And which party to the transaction decided the car would be transferred to Switzerland?
The factory, the Ferrari.
And which party, if any, was the factory representing in this transaction?
The buyer.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you can please take that down and put up what's in evidence as GXBR 440 and go to page 8. And then just zoom in on the, thank you. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
It's a receipt of funds.
And who received the funds?
Ferrari Beverly Hills.
What was the date of the funds transfer?
June 16, 2021.
How much was sent to Ferrari Beverly Hills on June 16, 2021?
$3,500,000.
And who sent the $3.5 million to Ferrari Beverly Hills?
Fiesta Property Developments.
And what transaction did this funds transfer relate to?
This was the balance of the amount on the FXXK EVO.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you can please take this down and put up for the witness what's marked as GXBR 1601. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is an email from my CFO to Adalberto Catabriga.
And what, if anything, is attached to this email?
It's called a bill of sale.
And what's a bill of sale?
The bill of sale is the document that we provide because on the race car, there is no title. So it's in lieu of a title.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please go to, actually, sorry, Your Honor, the government offers GXBR 1601.
Ms. Strofa said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit BR 1601 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could please take us to page 7 of the exhibit.
By Mr. Horton.
Mr. Mattioli, is this the bill of sale for the FXXK transaction you've been testifying about?
Yes.
The buyer line is blank in this version of the document. Did this transaction ultimately go through?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, if I could just have a moment, please.
The court said yes.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Loftus, if you could just highlight the buyer field on 1601 at page 7. I'm sorry. The buyer field with text to its right on top of that. And on the final bill of sale, Mr. Mattioli. What was the name of the buyer entity?
Fiesta Property Development.
Mr. Mattioli, We looked at an email you received on June 15 from Mileson UK@gmail.com. Did you ever meet Mileson in person?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you ever speak with Mileson on the phone?
No, I don't remember ever speaking to him.
And what, if any, due diligence did you do as the seller's representative in this transaction?
In this transaction we haven't done any due diligence because the buyer came directly from the Ferrari factory.
Is that typical in a consignment sale?
I wouldn't say it's typical in consignment sale. I would say that when you go through the factory and they choose the buyer, then you just rely on the Ferrari factory.
Mr. Mattioli, did anything about this transaction stand out to you?
What sense?
Was anything about it unusual to you at the time?
Not really, no.
Mr. Horton said, "If I could just have one more moment, Your Honor."
Pause.
Mr. Horton said, "Thank you, Your Honor." Mr. Mattioli, when was the car delivered to the buyer, what year?
No, it was subsequent to the transaction the car was transferred to Switzerland. I don't recall the date.
Mr. Horton said, "Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor."
The court said, cross-examination.
Ms. Strofa said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Cross-examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
Good morning, Mr. Mattioli.
Good morning.
The car brand that we're talking about is the Ferrari, correct?
Yes.
And this particular Ferrari FXX Gay, you would agree with me that it is a very exclusive car, correct?
Correct.
And even if I had the money to purchase it, I would still have to be vetted by Ferrari before I could buy it, correct?
Correct.
So there could be 50 people with the same amount of money trying to buy this car, and Ferrari factory would pick which of the 50 people would be allowed to buy it, right?
Yes. I mean, there's a waiting list. I don't know if it's 50.
Well, of course. Who doesn't want a Ferrari, right? So the value of this car per year, does it tend to increase or decrease?
Tend to increase.
Now, you testified about this. What did you call it, clienti? What is it called?
Course clienti maybe.
Yes. Is that like a program at Ferrari?
Yes.
And what is that program about?
The program is about enhancing the client experience relating to the track activities. Racetrack activities.
So I'm going to come back to the racetrack activities. The waiting list to get into this clienti program is also long, correct?
There is a waiting list.
And this person that the government kept asking you about Mileson Guo, right? You remember many questions about Mr. Mileson Guo on direct?
Yes.
So do you sitting here today know how far back Mileson Guo has been a customer of Ferrari?
No idea.
If I told you he had been a customer since 2011, you would not know?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, calls for speculation."
Ms. Strofa said, "I'll rephrase. I'll withdraw that and try again. Before you came to testify here, you reviewed all these names with Mr. Horton, correct? This man right here?
What names? Sorry.
Miles Guo, Fiesta Properties. You reviewed those names with him, right? When you prepped.
Yeah, we went through those names.
Did you by any chance check to see how far back Miles Guo had been a Ferrari customer?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, mischaracterizes the testimony."
Ms. Strofa said, "It's a question of whether or not he checked how far back Mr. Guo, my son Guo, is a customer. It's a question."
The court said you may answer.
Did you check?
No.
Did the prosecutor ask you to check to see how far back Miles Guo had been a Ferrari customer?
No.
Then you talked a little bit about something called the Caso Pilota. Is there such a thing?
I'm not sure I spoke about Caso Pilota, but yes, there is such a thing.
Could you tell the jury what that is?
Yes. Caso Pilota is a program. It's a driving school that is run by Ferrari to further develop the driving skills of the Ferrari clients.
And do they also participate in the track events?
Ooh.
The Caso Pilota.
I don't understand the question.
I will try again. Now, let me ask you this. There was a purchase request made to the Ferrari factory. Correct, for this car on consignment, right?
I would assume so. I didn't see the request.
And your dealership happened to have a car that matched what the factory was looking for, correct?
Yes. We had a car in consignment. And I immediately notified Ferrari factory department that we had this car available for sale.
And you work closely with Ferrari factory, correct?
Well, I work with Ferrari factory since many years.
Exactly. And you trust them to do their job, correct?
Yes.
And they trust you to do your job, correct?
I would think so. I don't know. I hope.
Fair enough. But Ferrari factory and you were trying to make sure that the sale happened, correct?
Yes.
And could I just have 802, Government Exhibit 802 back up? You remember the prosecutor asked you questions about this document, correct?
Yes.
And this is a very standard document, right?
Yes.
Could I have it made bigger, please? And you see how there is a date filled in. That's what you filled in, correct?
Yes.
And if I could just have page 2. You were listed as the seller, correct?
Yes.
And then below that there is a purchaser. I can't read that very long end. And then at the end it says still we rise, correct?
Yes.
And when you received this document, you saw nothing unusual about it. You just moved to the next step of the sale, right?
Correct.
You did not reply back and say, what is this purchaser company or what is it or anything like that. That was not part of your inquiry, right?
Correct.
Now, you testified on direct something about how the car is stored at a Ferrari facility, right? You remember that testimony?
Yes.
And it is very common, is it not? For the car to be stored at a Ferrari facility because the car needs as much attention as a 1-year-old child, right?
Mr. Horton said, object to form.
The court said you can answer.
I don't know if it needs that much attention. But I have 3 childs of my own, so I know that subject. Yes, the car. It's common to be left at storage at the factory for this specific model.
And when you testified that the car was transferred to Switzerland, do you really know if it actually made it to Switzerland?
No, I wasn't there.
So you don't know where the car is now, correct?
Right now, no, definitely no.
And you definitely don't know if it ever even left to go to Switzerland, correct?
Correct, yes.
Now, the prosecutor asked you questions about this default issue. If I could go back to page 802 at page 8. And you were asked about this email exchange, correct?
Yes.
And you see that portion where it says, while we understand that the delay in closing has been caused by factory's inspection, right? You see that?
Yes.
So it's fair to say that it wasn't the buyer's fault that things were delayed, right? It's the inspection that caused the delay. Is that a correct reading by me?
Well, it was a combination, I think.
Where does it say it's a combination? Does it say, while we understand that the delay in closing has been caused by a combination of factors including factory's inspection?
No.
So then you get a reply to this email, right? Could I show him the reply and the jury also? And you said that you were surprised by the response because it is from somebody named Mileson, right, on the top?
Yes.
And it says, I don't understand the email. We are trying our best to be patient. And he's telling you. He is being patient, right? Mileson is being patient?
Yes, that's what he's saying.
And you read the email, right?
Yes.
You're on the email chain, right?
Yes.
You don't reply and say, hey, buddy, you're the cause of the holdup, right?
I don't know who he was.
Right. So you don't say that. You don't say it's a combination of factors. You are contributing to the delay. You don't say any of those things to him?
Is that a question?
Yes.
So the question is, sorry, if I reply to this email. Is that the question?
Yeah.
I did not reply to this email.
And you did not reply to any of the other people and take Mileson off the email chain and say, hey, who is this guy replying, right?
No.
And could you tell me, sir, who is skyviewcapital.com? Who is that?
That in this transaction was the seller.
The seller, right?
Yes, the consignor.
So the seller knows who Mileson is because the seller doesn't reply either saying who is this Mileson person, right?
Mr. Horton said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, Overruled. You may answer.
So the question was again, sorry.
The question was, you said you were surprised by receiving this email from this person. My question is, nobody does anything about this surprise, correct?
I don't know what people did.
Well, you were on the email chain. You didn't get any email from anyone else saying anything about this person named Miles in UK's true home, right?
I think I receive an email back from Catabriga.
Saying what?
Thanking us for being patient and giving us more instruction for the completion of the deal.
Thank you. We can take that down. Now, you testified that according to you, you believed that the Ferrari factory represented the seller in this case or the buyer.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said you may answer.
They represented at the time the buyer.
So Ferrari factory told you that it had a buyer that was interested, correct?
Yes.
Who makes the commission on the sale, Ferrari factory or you?
I made the commission.
Ferrari factory has no financial incentive in the sale, correct?
Not that I know of.
Exactly. So Ferrari factory's only job is to make sure that the seller is Ferrari appropriate, right?
Correct, yeah. I would describe that.
And Ferrari is extremely particular about who it sales its cars to, right?
Yes.
So Justin Bieber, for example, can no longer purchase a Ferrari because he changed something on the Ferrari's car model, correct?
I'm not aware of such a thing.
No. You are aware of this program where Ferrari encourages track days so that the purchaser of these kind of cars can enjoy the car in a setting, correct?
Yes.
And there are 5 track dates a year, is that right?
I think it changes every year. There's a schedule, could be 5, could be 6, 7.
And on that day Ferrari organizes like a huge event, correct?
Ferrari promote the day at the track, yes.
And they invite people from the Clienti program, correct?
Yes.
They have race car trainers who teach the owners how to drive these cars, correct?
Correct, yes.
People bring their friends, family, colleagues, just for that event, correct?
I've seen that, yeah.
And there are many people who buy properties around these tracks so that they can participate in these events, and they can be promoted for companies or for their colleagues. Correct?
Mr. Horton said, object to scope.
The court said you may answer.
I'm not aware of that.
Now, on these track dates Ferrari brings the cars to the tracks, correct?
Yes. I would say most of the time Ferrari takes care of the transportations. But it's not 100% of the time, most of the time, yeah.
The court said, where does an owner keep the car?
The witness said, well, typically if you are active in the program, meaning you like to drive the car, you would leave the car at the factory so they can prep it, manage it, maintaining. Other owners, the more collectors, they just take the car home with them.
The court said, so those persons who want to race the car must always go to Italy?
The witness said, no, they actually have events all over the world.
The court said, go ahead.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Is it fair to say, sir, that there are certain dealerships like yours or dealerships in Europe who also host events for these cars?
No, we don't host events for the specific cars.
Now, the Ferrari factory makes sure that they give services such as storage for the car, correct?
Yes.
They help you maintain the car, correct?
Yes.
And if you want to be taken to or from the track, they make sure that all of those arrangements are taken care of by Ferrari, correct?
Yeah, Ferrari provide the services.
And what is the telemetry program, do you know?
Telemetry.
Yes.
Yes.
Could you tell the jury what that is?
Okay. So typical in a race car, to improve the performance. You analyze a lot of data, and telemetry is a program that allows you collect this data that will help you to improve the performance. To go faster.
And when these track events are held, they're filmed, and the film is given to the persons who attend. Is that correct?
I would say every car is pretty much equipped with camera, say GoPro camera just to give an example. Not to use the brand, but to use an idea for it. So, yes, every lap is filmed, and together with the telemetry. You can then show the driver what it can improve, where it can brake, where the line of the turn is, give instructions.
And this particular car, you know they showed you a photo and everything. I'm not going to pull that back up again. But I just want to make sure I understood your testimony clearly. Sitting here today, you do not know if the car ever left the Ferrari factory, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Sir, when you reviewed documents from Mr. Horton, you sent him documents, correct?
Yes.
You sent him emails, correct, such as the ones we saw now?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you did not send him any document confirming any transportation of this car to Switzerland, correct?
I don't remember if there was a shipment slip that was bill of lading. There must be something.
Only if the car was actually transported, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
You didn't give him any bill of ladings, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, you may answer.
I don't remember.
Ms. Strofa said, thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
The court said, any redirect?
Mr. Horton said, no further questions. Thank you.
The court said, so an individual who buys this particular model, is that person usually the driver or no?
The witness said, I would say for the majority, yes, it's the driver.
The court said, thank you. You may step out.
Witness excused.
The court said, the prosecution may call its next witness.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government's next witness is Haitham Khaled. We would ask if we could take maybe a 5-minute break. We have some materials to pass out for the jurors for the next witness. And we would like a couple of minutes to do that.
The court said, all righty. Members of the jury, we will take our 5-minute break. You're not to discuss the case. You're not allowed to read, watch, or listen to anything that has to do with this case.
Recess.
The court said, please have the jurors come in.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, would you like the witness on the stand?
The court said, yes, and please have the witness take the stand.
Jury present.
The court said, please be seated.
Haitham Khaled, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows.
The court said, please be seated. State your name and spell it and draw the microphone close to you.
The witness said, Haitham Khaled, Haitham Khaled.
The court said, you may inquire.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Your Honor.
Direct examination. By Ms. Murray.
Good morning, Mr. Khaled.
Good morning.
Where do you live?
Long Island, New York.
What do you do for work?
I am a mortgage banker as well as I have a consulting company.
What did you do before your current job?
I worked for GTV and Saraca.
Have you ever worked for Miles Guo?
Yes.
Do you see Mr. Guo in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you identify him by where he's seated and an item of clothing he's wearing?
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, we'll stipulate Mr. Miles Guo is at defense table.
The court said, okay.
Right there in gray.
And, Mr. Khaled, have you ever worked for an individual named Yanping Wang or Yvette Wang?
Yes.
At a high level, what did you do for Miles Guo and Yvette Wang?
I was in charge of banking relationships.
In that role, what communications, if any, did you have with banks?
I was in charge of opening up banking accounts for various entities and individuals. I communicated with them if there's any issues that arise, whether it's during the transactions or closure of the account.
And when you were working for Miles Guo and Yvette Wang, were you always truthful with banks?
No.
Why did you lie to banks?
To make sure that accounts get opened and stay open.
And is that because that was part of your employment?
Ms. Strofa said, objection to the leading.
The court said, don't lead.
Was that in the course of your employment that you had those communications with the banks?
Yes.
Mr. Khaled, did there come a time when you were approached by the FBI?
Yes.
Approximately when was that?
It was November 2021.
And when the FBI approached you, did they ask you questions?
Yes.
Did you answer their questions at that time?
No, I referred them.
After the FBI approached you in November 2021, did you consult with an attorney?
Yes.
Did there come a time when you met with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Yes.
Around when did you first meet with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
May 2022.
Approximately how many times have you met with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
18.
During those meetings, did the U.S. Attorney's Office, the government, ask you questions?
Yes.
Did you answer those questions?
Yes.
Did you answer them truthfully?
Yes.
Did you provide the U.S. Attorney's Office with information about your personal background?
Yes, I did.
Does that include that you filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy in 2018?
Yes.
During those meetings, did you also disclose crimes that you've committed?
Yes.
Did those include crimes that you committed while working for Miles Guo and Yvette Wang?
Yes.
Did they include other crimes that you'd committed in your past?
Yes.
Did you provide documents and other information and materials to the government?
I did.
Did those include certain recordings, audio recordings that you made?
Yes.
Mr. Khaled, after meeting with the government, were you offered an agreement?
Yes.
What sort of agreement were you offered?
A non-prosecution agreement, NPA.
What's your understanding of what a non-prosecution agreement is?
That I have to tell the truth and disclose crimes that I have committed. I have to attend meetings. I have to testify if I'm requested to.
If you do those things under your non-prosecution agreement, what's your understanding, if any, of what the government will do?
Will not prosecute me.
And specifically, what crimes has the government promised they won't charge you for from your time working for Miles Guo and Yvette Wang?
Participating in a fraud scheme.
What is your understanding as to whether the non-prosecution agreement protects you from prosecution for the other crimes you committed?
It does.
And those are crimes that you disclose to the government, correct?
Yes.
What is your understanding as to whether the non-prosecution agreement protects you from prosecution from perjury, obstruction of justice, or making false statements if you were to lie on the stand today?
This agreement will be voided.
And is it your understanding the government could separately prosecute you for perjury, obstruction of justice, or making false statements if you lie here?
Yes.
If your non-prosecution agreement were voided, is it your understanding you could be charged for all of the crimes you've disclosed to the government?
Yes.
In that situation, would the statements that you've made to the government be used against you?
They would.
Aside from the non-prosecution agreement, were you made any other promises by the government?
No.
During your meetings with the government, did you tell the government about all of the crimes that you committed?
Yes, I did.
Did that include inflating your personal expenses in documents you submitted to modify your home loan in 2016?
Yes.
Did it include falsifying bank statements that you submitted in connection with a home loan modification in 2010?
Yes.
And did it include inflating reported work expenses in filings you submitted to the IRS from about 2009 to 2011 to lower your tax bill?
Yes.
What protections, if any, does your non-prosecution agreement provide you for those crimes?
I will be not prosecuted for those crimes.
Mr. Khaled, if you tell the truth during your testimony in this case, but no one gets convicted, do you still get to keep your non-prosecution agreement?
Ms. Strofa said, "Objection."
The court said, overruled.
Yes.
If you lie during your testimony but someone gets convicted, do you get to keep your non-prosecution agreement?
No.
Who decides if you tell the truth during your testimony?
I do.
Mr. Khaled, I want to start by talking about how you first met Yvette Wang. If I call her Yvette, will you understand that I'm referring to Yvette Wang or Yanping Wang?
Yes.
Approximately when did you meet Yvette Wang?
April 2018.
What were you doing for work at that time?
I worked at Citibank as a business relationship manager.
At that time in 2018, approximately how long had you been working at Citibank?
For years.
What did you do as a business relationship banker at Citibank?
I used to open business accounts, process loans for businesses. That's it.
What did you do for work before you were at Citibank?
I work for Santander.
In what role?
Also a business banker.
For approximately how long were you a business banker at Santander?
Approximately 4 years also.
Did you have any other banking-related jobs before your job at Santander?
Yeah, I worked for 2 international banks before that.
Which international banks?
Arab Bank plc and National Bank of Kuwait.
For approximately how long did you work for those 2 international banks?
Total of 10 years.
And in what role or roles?
Private banking, correspondent banking, different types of banking.
Returning to 2018, can you explain how you met Yvette?
I was introduced to her by a law firm. And they requested me that she needed help in opening up a bank account for her business.
Did there come a time when Yvette got in contact with you regarding that bank account?
Yes.
For what entity or company was Yvette looking to open a bank account at Citibank?
Golden Spring, LLC.
What, if anything, did Yvette say to you about what type of business Golden Spring conducted?
She said that they help worthy individuals that are in the US with security logistics and other factors that they need.
What, if anything? Did Yvette tell you about the type of bank account that she wanted you to open for Golden Spring?
Just an operating account.
Did she tell you anything about the source of funds that would be going into that account?
She said it will be for those clients funding that account.
At that time during your first meeting with Yvette, did she identify any of Golden Spring's clients by name?
No.
What happened after that meeting with Yvette that was relevant to your work with Golden Spring?
We continued to open the account, collected documents, collected signer information. And the account was open at that time.
Mr. Khaled, are you familiar with the term KYC?
Yes.
What does it stand for?
Know your customer.
Can you describe what KYC entails?
It's knowing who is the ultimate beneficiary of, if you're opening up a business account. Who they are, what type of activities are going to be going through the account, source of funds, a volume. Information about the signers, date of birth, residency, etc.
And at what stage in the account opening process does a bank conduct KYC?
It's done in the initial stage. But it's also done throughout the process or the life of a bank account.
Were you involved with the KYC for the Golden Spring bank account for Citi?
For collecting the information, yes.
And with whom did you communicate at Golden Spring regarding the KYC documentation that you collected?
It was Yvette, and she had another employee at that time. I can't recall her name.
Did there come a time when Citibank opened bank accounts for Golden Springs?
Yes.
How many accounts?
I believe 1 or 2 current accounts, checking accounts. And then a few money market accounts to earn interest.
After the bank account for Golden Spring were open at Citibank, what was your involvement or role for those accounts, if any?
Just point of contact. If there's any issues, Yvette would give me a call or send me an email. Or whoever is the signer if they needed an additional debit card or needed any large wires coming in. Or if they needed checkbooks, a point of contact. That's it.
And for approximately how long were you the point of contact at Citibank for the Golden Spring accounts?
It was until 2019, early 2019.
What, if anything, happened in early 2019 that changed your involvement with the Golden Spring account?
I changed position. I became a healthcare banker. Just in charge of the healthcare client of the bank, and therefore, Golden Spring was not part of my clients anymore.
After you transitioned to that new role, how often, if at all, were you in contact with Yvette?
Not much. I don't recall being in any contact with her.
After your transition in 2019, did there come a time when Yvette asked you to help open additional bank accounts at Citibank?
Yes.
Around when was that?
May of 2020.
Were those business accounts or personal accounts?
Business.
For what entity or entities?
GTV and Saraca.
What, if anything? Did Yvette tell you about GTV at the time that she asked for your assistance in opening a bank account?
She said it's going to be a large account, and it will be for a private offering of a media company.
What, if anything? Did Yvette tell you about Saraca when she asked for your assistance in opening a bank account?
That Saraca is a parent company of GTV.
Did you have an understanding of Yvette's role at either Saraca or GTV?
Not exact role, but she was the person that referred the clients. It was part of her organization.
In connection with opening those accounts, what, if anything? Did Yvette say about any existing Saraca or GTV bank accounts?
She said that they had an account with Chase.
Did she say anything about the amount of money that was held in that Chase account?
No, she just said large, but I had a different role at this time. I didn't dig into the details of the account.
After Yvette asked for your assistance in opening accounts in the name of Saraca and GTV, what did you do next?
I referred accounts to a business banker that had taken my old role.
Do you know whether GTV or Saraca bank accounts were in fact open at Citibank?
Yes, they were.
How do you know that?
The banker informed me and kept in contact of updating me.
What credit, if any, were you given for referring those two banks to Citibank?
I was recognized after the account got funded that it was a large referral that I made.
Do you recall the approximate amount of the funding of those accounts?
200 million.
Mr. Khaled. Did there come a time when you became aware of a Securities and Exchange Commission or SEC allegation relating to GTV?
Yes.
Around when was that?
June of 2020.
What did you learn?
That there was an investigation for improper private offering.
And when you say private offering, can you explain to the jury what you mean?
It's an investment.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said you may answer.
It's an investment structure, but it's for certain individuals, not a public opening like a stock.
Did there come a time when Citibank took adverse action regarding the GTV and Saraca accounts?
Yes.
Around when was that?
End of June of 2020.
And what, if anything, did Citibank do with respect to those accounts in June 2020?
They blocked the account and then closed it.
Were you personally involved in the decision to either block or close those accounts?
No.
Do you know why Citi decided to close those accounts?
It was a reputation risk.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Objection, Your Honor, hearsay."
The court said, overruled. The answer stands.
Mr. Khaled, did you ever speak with Yvette about those account closures? The closure of the GTV and Saraca at Citi?
Yes.
What, if anything, did she say about those account closures?
That she doesn't care if the account gets closed. But she wants the proceeds of that account, the checks.
Do you know what happened to the money that had been in the Saraca and GTV accounts at Citi?
It was given to Yvette in the form of multiple checks.
What role, if any, did you have with respect to those funds that had been in the Saraca and GTV accounts at Citi?
Nothing, just follow up with James to make sure that it's resolved.
And who is James?
James is the banker that I referred the account to at Citibank.
Mr. Khaled, did there come a time when Yvette tried to hire you?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Objection, Your Honor, leading. It assumes facts not in evidence."
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Approximately when was that?
Just after July of 2020.
How did that come about?
Just throughout the communication she said that, we're doing big things and she wants me to join their organization and their company.
And after that conversation with Yvette, what happened next?
I went to meet Yvette at her office.
Where was that office located?
It was on 64th Street, 162, East 64th Street in Manhattan.
Ms. Loftus. If you could please show the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 132. Mr. Khaled. What is Government Exhibit 132?
That's the office building, the one with the glass.
Is this a photograph of the office building where you met Yvette?
Yes.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of that office building?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit 132.
Ms. Shrofa said, No objection.
The court said, It is admitted.
Government's Exhibit 162 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, Can we please publish? Mr. Khaled, in this photo which is coming up for the jury, can you explain which of the buildings we're looking at is the office that you were referring to?
It's the one with the glass.
Is it on the left or the right side of the two in the middle?
The right.
I'm going to refer to that building as the townhouse.
Ms. Shrofa said, Objection, Your Honor.
The court said, Overruled. You may go ahead.
Ms. Murray said, Thank you, Your Honor. When I refer to the townhouse, will you understand that I'm referring to that building?
Yeah.
And looking at this, Mr. Khaled, what floor or floors of the townhouse did the office that you visited occupy?
It was the entire building.
We can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Thank you. When you went to meet with Yvette regarding the job, Mr. Khaled, what, if anything, did she tell you about what role she was offering you?
I was offered a banking relations manager, as well as strategic manager as well.
And for what company or companies?
At the time when we met, she didn't mention, but I was eventually hired by GTV.
When you went to interview with Yvette, what, if anything, did she tell you about who she worked for?
She said she works for the big boss principal. She didn't mention his name at that time.
When you went to the townhouse for the interview with Yvette, did you meet anyone else?
Yes.
Who?
Aaron Mitchell was in the office, and the front desk there was a security.
Who is Aaron Mitchell?
He was in-house attorney.
Ms. Loftus, can you please show the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 128? Mr. Khaled, do you recognize the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 128?
Yes.
Who is it?
That's Aaron Mitchell.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit 128.
Ms. Shrofa said, We have no objection.
The court said, It is admitted.
Government's Exhibit 128 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, We can publish that. Mr. Khaled, can you just remind us again what was Aaron Mitchell's role to your understanding?
In-house attorney.
For what entity or entities?
Didn't specify, just a group.
Thank you. Ms. Loftus, we can take that down. Based on your interview with Yvette at the townhouse, did you have an understanding of what type of duties and responsibilities you would be doing?
Just banking relationship for the group. A project that involved financial institution and setting up a financial institution.
And during that interview, did you and Yvette discuss what compensation, if any, you would receive?
Yes.
What was your compensation going to be?
$350,000 a year.
How did that $350,000 a year compare with what you were making at Citibank at the time?
It's about 40% increase.
Approximately how much more in a dollar amount?
About $150,000 more.
Per year?
Yes.
In advance of the interview with Yvette, did you do any independent research on GTV or Saraca?
Just YouTube, Google, that kind of stuff.
What, if anything, did you find?
I found some videos on YouTube about GTV, Saraca, and Miles Guo.
What, if anything, did you learn about Miles Guo from your research that you did?
Someone from China seeking asylum in the US against the CCP.
Mr. Khaled, after the interview with Yvette at the townhouse, did there come a time when you met with or interviewed with someone else in connection with the potential job?
Yes, I did a video call.
A video call with whom?
Miles Guo.
Prior to the video call with Miles Guo, what, if anything, had Yvette told you about Miles Guo?
That is the boss.
Aside from the boss, did Yvette refer to Guo by any other name?
Yes.
Ms. Strofa said, asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Principal.
In advance of your video call with Miles Guo, what, if anything, did Yvette say about whether you would be working for Miles Guo?
Yeah, it depend on him liking me and approving that I would work.
Who participated in your video meeting with Miles Guo?
Just me and Yvette and Miles Guo.
During that meeting, what language was Guo speaking?
Spoke a little bit of English and then that's it, wasn't very clear back and forth.
What other languages does Miles Guo speak to your understanding?
Chinese, Mandarin.
Do you speak Mandarin?
No.
Do you understand Mandarin?
No.
During the video meeting what, if anything, did Guo ask you?
It's more of welcoming me to the family in terms of we're going to do big things, excited.
What, if anything, did Guo say about the potential job offer with respect to what your duties would be?
The main project was opening up a bank. We're going to open up a bank.
Did there come a time after that video meeting with Miles Guo and Yvette Wang when you were offered a formal position?
Yes.
And what company offered you the position?
I believe the contract was either Saraca or GTV. I'm not sure.
Ms. Loftus. If we could please show the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit BR 399. Mr. Khaled. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
At a high level, what is it?
That's my offer letter from Saraca Media.
Ms. Loftus, could we go to the next page, please? Did you sign this letter?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit BR 399.
Ms. Strofa said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit BR 399 received in evidence. By Ms. Murray.
Can we please go to the first page and publish that? If we could zoom in on the top portion, please. Through item number 5. Mr. Khaled, what is the date of this offer letter?
July 6, 2020.
And if you could read the full name of the company that sent this offer letter?
Saraca Media Group Incorporated.
In the first sentence starting with, it is, can you please first read that sentence?
It is my pleasure to formally extend our offer of employment to you as VP of Banking Relations and Strategy at Saraca Media Group, Inc., and its subsidiary entities.
Thank you. And looking at item number 3, what was the salary for this job?
$350,000.
And looking at item number 5, what is the bolded title of that paragraph?
Equity.
Was it your understanding from this offer letter that there would be an equity component to your compensation for your work at Saraca?
Yes.
During your time working for Saraca, did you ever receive any equity in Saraca?
No.
Did you ever receive any shares or stock equity in any of Saraca's subsidiary entities?
No.
If we could zoom out, Ms. Loftus, and go to the last page, please. And, Mr. Khaled. Is it correct that that's your signature?
Yes.
What date did you sign this offer of employment?
July 10, 2020.
We can zoom out and take that down. And when did you start working for Saraca?
August 1, 2020.
When you accepted the employment with Saraca and started working for Saraca in August of 2020. Did you quit your job at Citibank?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I wanted to make sure that this job is real.
What do you mean by that?
It was a pandemic. I wasn't sure if it's going to be something real or not. That's it.
How long did you work for both companies Saraca and Citibank?
Approximately 2 months.
Did the terms of your employment contract with Citibank permit you to take outside jobs?
No.
Did you disclose your employment at Saraca to Citibank at the time in July, August of 2020?
No, I did not.
Did you disclose to Yvette or anyone at Saraca that you were still employed by Citibank when you started working for Saraca?
No.
Why not?
Again, I wanted to make sure that the job is real. I was worried that it's not and it's just something that I would not like. I wanted to keep my Citibank job if I could if something happened.
Ms. Shrofa said, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I did not hear the last part his response.
The court said, if you'll read back the answer, please.
Record was read.
Mr. Khaled, when did you stop working at Citibank?
October 1st, 2020.
During August and September of 2020, were you formally employed by both entities?
Yes.
Did you have an understanding of whether that employment by both entities was in violation of the terms of your employment agreement?
Yeah, for Citibank, yeah.
Turning now to August of 2020, what was your understanding of who you worked for when you started at Saraca?
My direct manager was Yvette.
What was the location of the office where you worked?
162 64th Street.
Was it the townhouse?
The townhouse, yeah.
How many floors were in the townhouse?
5.
Was Saraca or its subsidiary GTV, were those the only companies that operated out of the townhouse?
No.
When you started working there in August of 2020, what other companies operated out of the townhouse?
Ms. Shrofa said, Objection, Your Honor. It assumes facts not in evidence. May we have a sidebar, please?
The court said, all right.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, I have 2 objections. I know the court overruled my objection about referring to the building as the townhouse. There is no witness who has ever referred to it as the townhouse. So the word comes from either the government or the government's prosecution team. But there is number 3500 that refers to this building as the townhouse. It is noted as an office building. And I have a continuing objection. And I ask the court most respectfully to reconsider because it's not even this witness's testimony that he referred to it as the townhouse.
The court said, are you saying it doesn't fit the description of a townhouse?
Ms. Shrofa said, it does not. It's an office building. Whether it's a short office building or not, it's an office building. 52 Duane, for example, is a short office building. It's an office building. It's not a townhouse.
The court said, even if it was built originally as a townhouse?
Ms. Shrofa said, we don't have any evidence that it was built as a townhouse. If they want to show evidence that it was built as a townhouse, leased as a townhouse, then yeah. But this is a word they made, townhouse. It's not a townhouse. It's an office building. It is licensed for office rental. It is not a home. So, for example, the building where I live, which is similar in look maybe, I couldn't open an office there because it's not. What is the word?
Mr. Kamaraju said, zoned.
Ms. Shrofa said, it's not zoned for an office building. More importantly, Your Honor, whether it is or is not a townhouse, it's not proper to refer to it just because the government made up the word the townhouse. They can call it the office building. 64th Street, whatever. So could I start referring to it as the Buddhist temple on East 64th Street because they worship in that building? It's not a fair description of the building, but that is my objection. My main objection is, there is no witness who has ever testified that it is a townhouse. The second objection I have, Your Honor, is the questioning is now about the work being done at the building. I'm pretty certain that the 3500 makes clear. This gentleman never went to the building during the pandemic, and especially during the time where he was double dipping. And that's the way he got away with it, right? The way he got away with it is to pick a job without either side finding out is because everybody was working remotely during that time. And he didn't go there or do any work in that building. So those were the reasons for my objection. Finally, I do have a continuing objection to the leading by the government. I didn't interrupt again. But it's looping and leading, so I have a continuing objection.
Ms. Murray said, happy to turn those in turn. With respect to the second point, Ms. Shroff respectfully misunderstood the 3500 material. This witness did not go to Citibank during the pandemic, which is how he was able to leverage the dual jobs. He did go to the townhouse, which is a descriptor that various witnesses have used to describe the building. I'll get to that in a moment. He did go in person, including starting in August of 2020, once or twice a week. Not every day at first until people came back to work. He was certainly present there and working out of that building from the beginning of his employment. He has personal knowledge of what was going on in that building. And he also did banking work for various of the entities aside from GTV and Saraca that were in that building, which we're going to be laying a foundation for and discussing at length during his testimony. With respect to the description of the building as a townhouse. First of all, that is a factual description of the structure. It is a townhouse. It was built as a townhouse. It is an effort for the government to simplify when we refer to that building. Other things that it's been referred to by the defendant, for example, is the Himalaya Embassy. If they would prefer that we call it something like the Himalaya Embassy, also known as the townhouse, we could certainly do that. I think again for streamlining purposes, it is much easier for us to refer to it as the townhouse. Similarly, when we talk about where the operations moved a couple of years later, which is 3 Columbus Circle, we intend to call that 3 Columbus Circle or 3CC because it is a shorthand description. With respect to Ms. Schroff's objection, the leading nature, I'm trying, Your Honor. I'll do a better job of building in some foundation if there is any that's needed. I think on the last 2 questions there was an objection. I don't believe it was objectionable. I first asked him whether the company he worked for was the only company operating out of the building. And he said no. So I asked the follow-up question about what other companies were working there.
Ms. Schroff said, East 64th Street is just as short as townhouse. Office building is just as short as townhouse. 3 Columbus Circle, we have no objection to it being 3CC because that's an actual physical address. If you want to introduce any evidence that this building was built as a home and a townhouse, you should feel free to do so. But until then, it is an office building zoned for office use. It is misleading to keep calling it the townhouse. And it leaves the jury with the impression that somehow or the other there's something nefarious going on by using a home as a townhouse as an office. If they want to use it and call it the Himalayan Embassy, which frankly is longer than East 64th, and by the way, East 64th is something every New Yorker would relate to. So it's really not that much of a stretch for the government to use the phrase. But the townhouse is being used for a very specific purpose by the government. That's my objection.
The court said, so it happens that I took a course on the history of New York City architecture at NYU, and that structure does fit the description of a townhouse. I think it is entirely not misleading. And so you may refer to it as a townhouse. And you're correct that he did mention other entities previously. So this last question was not leading. We're done.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, so it is 11:29. Time for our break. When you return at noon, we'll continue with the direct examination of this witness. Remember, do not discuss the case. Don't read, listen, or watch anything about anything having to do with the subject matter of this case.
Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, Mr. Khaled, you may step out. Do not discuss your testimony. We'll resume at noon. And if you'll have the witness on the stand at 11:59.
Ms. Murray said, just a matter or two before we break once the witness has left.
Witness temporarily excused.
The court said, okay.
Ms. Murray said, just 2 housekeeping matters, Your Honor. First, we place binders under the jury's chairs. Those contain certain transcripts that we will be introducing pursuant to a stipulation. Second, this witness had recordings that he will be authenticating. For the sake of efficiency, we have put them on a hard drive that he has reviewed in its entirety, and signed and dated and can identify. We discussed this with defense counsel. So at the time when we ask him to authenticate those, I will ask to approach. He will confirm that he recognizes the hard drive and the exhibits contained therein. And then we will introduce and seek to admit into evidence certain of those recordings. But I just wanted to flag that the parties have discussed this in advance.
The court said, and you'll say that he had listened to it at a certain time?
Ms. Murray said, yes, Your Honor. That's correct.
The court said, all righty.
Ms. Murray said, thank you.
Recess. Afternoon session 12:20 p.m.
The court said, please have the jurors brought in.
Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Remember, sir, you're still under oath. You may continue.
By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Khaled, when we left off, we were talking about the other companies that operated out of the townhouse when you started at Saraca in August 2020. Can you describe what some of those companies were?
Golden Spring was there, the Rule of Law Foundation, and of course Saraca and GTV operated from there.
And what type of company was Golden Spring?
Golden Spring was really the family office that made payments.
And just to remind you, if you could just keep the microphone pointed at your mouth, it will help us all out.
Sorry.
At the time you started in August 2020, who, if anyone, worked for Golden Spring?
Max Carsonas, sick, I think is his last name. He had a couple of other junior accountants as well that worked under him.
And you mentioned Rule of Law Foundation. Can you describe your understanding of what Rule of Law Foundation was?
Rule of Law was a not-for-profit organization helping the whistleblower movement.
What is the whistleblower movement, to your understanding at the time?
Individuals that were talking against the CCP that needed help after, either they get incarcerated or they need to travel, something like that.
When you started working for Saraca in August of 2020, what, if anything, was the source of your information about the whistleblower movement?
Nothing. Just employees that were there told me what it is.
What, if anything, did you understand about who led the whistleblower movement?
It was Miles Guo.
Mr. Khaled, which company paid your salary?
Initially it was GTV, but then Lexington Properties. Lexington Properties.
And what is Lexington Properties?
It was a company created so operations and employee and salaries to be paid through.
A company created by whom?
It was Yvette Wang.
What role, if any, did you have with respect to Lexington Properties?
I think I helped with some of the foundation documents as well as account opening for it.
Mr. Khaled, can you describe your first week working for Saraca in August of 2020?
It was very confusing of what my job was going to be, no structure, really. It was also the pandemic at that time, so it was weird times, in terms of, employees not being there. That's it.
When you say, there, where are you referring to?
The townhouse.
Did you go and work out of the townhouse during your first week or so when you were employed by Saraca?
Yeah, I went maybe once or twice, not every day.
Who else, if anyone, was working at the townhouse when you started working at Saraca?
Max was always there most of the days that I went. Again, junior accountants were there. In-house attorneys were there, cleaning, there was cleaning staff, security, Yvette was there when I was there.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can you please publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 110? Mr. Khaled, do you recognize the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 110?
That's Max Carsonas, I think it was.
And can you remind us, what was Max's role?
He was in finance, handling multiple entities, mainly Golden Spring, but others as well.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Ms. Loftus. We can take that down. At a high level, during your first few weeks working for Saraca, what did you spend your time doing?
We were tackling the issue with Citibank and trying to find an account for Saraca and GTV and setting up Lexington.
And who did you work with, typically, on a daily basis when you started at Saraca?
It was Yvette, in-house lawyer Jessica. And then after that they introduced new lawyers in the building, Yvette introduced me to new lawyers. Max. Connected with Max as well. There was new hires happening every day, so.
Mr. Khaled, you mentioned that Yvette worked out of a townhouse when you started at Saraca. How often did you see her there, if at all?
I would say every time I was there, she would come in. There's days that she would come in later. So pretty often.
Do you have an understanding of what company Yvette worked for?
It wasn't a specific, she was involved with a lot of the companies.
When you started working for Saraca in August of 2020, did there come a time, if ever, when you saw Miles Guo at the townhouse?
Yes.
What were the circumstances of Miles Guo being at the townhouse?
He used to come and visit. Again, it was COVID, so it wasn't every day. But he would come and visit once in a while.
When Miles Guo was at the townhouse, did he work out of a certain space or location within the townhouse?
Yes.
Where?
It was the top floor. I believe it's the fifth floor of the building, of the townhouse.
Can you describe the hierarchy of the offices within the townhouse, if any?
Sure. So the front was the security check-in. There was a studio there on the ground floor. Some HR individuals would work on those desks. And then you go one floor down. There's a big conference room and a kitchen. That's where people had lunch, and it was just a big, nice conference room. On the first floor, there was Golden Spring and accounting. That's where Max worked. The floor above that, I believe there was a few desks and a kitchen, private kitchen, though. It wasn't for all the employees. It was a private kitchen. The top floor had rule of law desks and area for rule of law. And then before Miles and Yvette's office, there was a secretary, and there were some offices for attorneys, in-house attorneys. These were like management level. And then above that there's Miles's office, and there's a conference room that Yvette used to sit in.
And again, focusing on the first couple of weeks that you were working at Saraca, can you describe what your interactions with Miles Guo were like?
Wasn't much, just, focus, give him some briefings, through Yvette, in a meeting. That's really it.
What type of information, if any, would you brief Miles Guo on?
I was working on setting up a bank in the US. So we were talking about the different firms that are helping us identify a bank. So just those type of briefings on where are we in the process. He would encourage us. That's really it.
In the fall of 2020, when you were working at Saraca, can you describe what a typical day at the office was like?
So the first couple of weeks really the struggle was to find a way to pay the staff and to pay rent. And to do so, we needed bank accounts, and we needed an entity that does not have a lot of news on it. Negative news. So it really was, I was working on identifying banks that are willing to entertain account opening and set up those accounts. The first couple weeks.
Can you describe what you mean by negative news?
Negative press. The SEC was a big negative press out there. Banks typically don't want to set up an account for a company or an entity that might have negative news or investigation on it. Subpoenas, etc. So.
What about Golden Spring? Why, if at all? Couldn't you open bank accounts with Golden Spring to pay the payroll?
I believe some articles had Golden Spring on there connecting them to GTV and Saraca.
What was the relationship during that time, fall of 2020, between Yvette and the other employees?
Ms. Strofa said, objection as to form.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
It was normal. She was caring. She smiled with everybody. But she definitely was the person we reported to.
What about Miles Guo? What was the relationship, if any, between Miles Guo and the employees of the townhouse?
Same. He would say hello to a lot of the workers from top to bottom. There was definitely fear that, he is the top boss. So everybody needed to be either working or busy with something.
Mr. Khaled, are you familiar with an entity called Crane?
Yes.
What is it?
Crane was an entity I created with discussion with Yvette and an in-house attorney named Victor. But it was all 100% under my name.
What was the full name of that entity?
Crane Advisory Group LLC.
Whose idea was it to establish Crane?
It was a combination between Yvette, Victor, and myself.
What, if anything, was the purpose of establishing Crane?
That was going to be the entity that was either going to apply for a license for a bank, acquire a bank, or set up online digital bank.
Approximately when did you establish Crane?
I would say within the first month that I started working there.
And when you say started working there, are you referring to working at Saraca?
Yes,
Who worked for Crane?
I was really the only employee of Crane. And I had an assistant that had a Crane email but was getting paid by Lexington.
And were you formally employed by Crane?
It was my company, just a single-member LLC.
Were you paid by Crane as an entity?
No,
What entity paid you after you established Crane?
still Lexington Properties.
And with what entity did you have an employment contract after you established Crane?
Still with Saraca.
What is Victor's full name?
Victor Serda.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can you please show the witness what's marked for identification as Government Exhibit 109? Mr. Khaled, do you recognize the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 109?
Yes,
Who is it?
that's Victor Serda.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit 109.
Ms. Shrofa said, No objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit 109 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, Can we please publish that, Ms. Loftus?
By Ms. Murray.
Now that the jury can see it, Mr. Khaled, can you remind us? What entity or entities did Victor Serda work for?
Ms. Shrofa said, Objection, Your Honor, to the form of the question. There is no indication anybody's forgotten any of the answers.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Not a specific company. He works for the family.
When you say the family, what family are you referring to?
Personal for Guo family.
Ms. Murray said, Thank you, Ms. Loftus. We can take that down. Mr. Khaled, what was Crane's office address?
One World Trade Center.
And is that where you actually went to work every day when you worked for Crane?
No,
What type of office space, if any, was One World Trade Center?
it was like a virtual office, through a ServCorp.
And what type of services does ServCorp provide, if any?
They have shared offices similar to like Regus, and they offer a virtual office. They give you an address, a phone number, mailing service. That's about it.
Why, if at all, did you establish a virtual office for Crane?
'Cause I wanted to detach Crane from Golden Spring and the address of GTV and Saraca.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, if I may approach the witness, I'm going to hand up a binder.
The court said, okay.
Ms. Murray said, This is a binder that contains documents that have been marked with the following exhibit numbers. Government Exhibits BR 363-364. 367 to 375, 380, 382, 384, 387, 392, 396 to 398, 1506 to 1509, 1511 to 1519. Government Exhibits GC 131, 498, 500 to 502, 507 to 508, and Government Exhibits SW 2002, 2005, 2008, 2009, 2021, 2027, 2030, 2032, 2035, 2038, 2040, 2042, 2045, 2046, 2050 to 2055, 2057, 2061, 2068, 2070, 2076, 2077, 2083. Mr. Khaled, can you flip through that binder and let me know if you recognize those documents?
Yes,
Ms. Murray said, Just a moment, please, Your Honor.
Counsel conferring.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, I'm just going to show defense a binder. I apologize. I thought we had a copy for them as well. Mr. Khaled, you said you recognized the documents in the binder, is that correct?
yes,
Have you seen them before?
yes,
Do those documents relate to the work that you did with and for Guo, Yvette, and others during your time employed at Saraca or Crane?
yes,
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, at this time the government offers the exhibits that are contained within that binder. I'm happy to read the exhibit numbers into the record again if the court reporter would like.
The court said, It's not necessary for me that you read them in. Is there any objection?
Ms. Shrofa said, No, Your Honor. And all things being equal, I don't think we need to tax the court reporter.
The court said, So they are admitted.
Government's Exhibits BR 363-364, 367 to 375, 380, 382, 384, 387, 392, 396 to 398, 1506 to 1509, 1511 to 1519, GC 131, for 98, 500 to 502, 507 to 508, SW 2002, 2005, 2008, 2009, 2021, 2027, 2030, 2032, 2035, 2038, 2040, 2042, 2045, 2046, 2050 to 2055, 2057, 2061, 2068, 2070, 2076, 2077, 2083 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, Thank you.
By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Khaled, returning to the virtual office that we were just speaking about, what other companies, if any, did you set up a virtual office for?
Lexington Properties had a virtual office, G Club had a virtual office. G Music also had a virtual office, G News also had a virtual office, and G Fashion also had a virtual office.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could please publish what's now in evidence as Government Exhibit SW 2008. We can zoom in on the top portion, please. Mr. Khaled, what type of document is this?
It's an email.
Who is it sent to?
My name.
And is that your Crane business email address?
Yes.
What date was this sent?
October 14th, 2020.
And from what company?
Regus.
What type of company is Regus?
Regus is the company that rents the virtual office space as well as shared space.
So this is sent to your email address, but to whom is the actual body of the email addressed?
Yvette Wang.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom out and go to the second page, please, which is the attachment. And focus on the top portion. Mr. Khaled, what is the account name for this virtual office space?
G Fashion LLC.
And the contact listed for G Fashion LLC?
Yvette Wang.
And what is the physical address of the virtual office space for G Fashion?
750, Lexington Avenue, New York, 10065.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, we can take that down. And please publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit SW 2009. Zooming in on the top portion with the text. Mr. Khaled, what is the date of this email?
October 14th, 2020.
And again, who is it sent from and to whom?
From Regus to me, at Crane Advisory Group.
And in the body of the email, to whom it is addressed?
Yvette Wang.
What is the virtual office address for this Regus office that's reflected in this document?
590, Madison Avenue, New York City.
Ms. Murray said, we can take that down, Ms. Loftus. And Mr. Khaled, the various companies you mentioned for which you set up virtual offices. Did all of those companies operate in practice out of the townhouse?
A few. The only one that did not, I think, is G Fashion. But there was some activities for G Fashion once in a while.
So Crane, for example, did Crane ever operate any business out of the One World Trade Center address?
No.
And did G Fashion operate business out of the virtual office address at 750 Lexington?
No.
You mentioned a couple of other entities for which you set up virtual offices. I believe G News. Where did G News operate out of?
There was one or two employees that did IT that was related to G News. They operated out of the townhouse on Lexington.
And what was the reason, if any, for setting up different virtual offices for these different entities?
That this was the dissociation between Saraca, GTV, and the news of Golden Spring.
Mr. Khaled, when you were working at Crane, focusing on the beginning of your time at Crane, what type of work were you doing?
Working towards setting up a bank and getting a license. And then after that we started looking at different financial institutions as well.
How, if at all? Was that work at Crane different than the work you had been doing when you were employed by Saraca? Or working for Saraca the first few weeks?
It was really the same thing.
Apart from the salary that you received from Lexington Properties for your Saraca employment, did you receive any other compensation during your time working at Crane?
No.
Aside from a salary, did you receive any fees or any other monetary amount related to your work at Crane?
No.
When you started working for Guo and Yvette in August of 2020, what was your role, if any, with respect to banking relationships?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. When you started working for Guo and Yvette in August of 2020, what was your role, if any, with respect to banking relationships?
I was the liaison between the entities, the signers, and the bank relationship managers and the banks.
And when you say entities, what entities are you referring to?
Lexington. There was a few other holding companies held by the family that also had their accounts closed. There was a trust that they wanted to open an account for. Just a number of accounts. And I had to connect with the banks and the bankers to facilitate that.
Did you discuss the bank account closures with anyone that you worked with at the townhouse?
Yeah. Usually the signers know and Yvette knows.
What, if anything, did you and Yvette discuss about the bank account closures?
Usually they'll send us an email or they have a conversation with me that they have decided to close the account. I would have to let Yvette know, the attorneys, the in-house attorneys that are familiar with those entities know. And that's it.
What, if anything, were you directed to do to address the banking issues that the entities were having?
Ms. Shrofa said. Directed by whom?
The court said, you may answer both questions. Go ahead.
Directed by Yvette, Victor, the in-house attorneys, that we need another account ASAP.
Can you describe this conversation in a bit more detail with respect to what you were asked to do? If anything.
To find another bank, as soon as possible.
And what did you do in reaction to that instruction?
So two things, find another bank. And it got to a point where I had to hedge and open two accounts for each entity at two different financial institutions so that when an account gets closed, there's always a backup.
Can you describe the process of how you would open a new bank account when you were working at Crane?
It evolved a little bit. Before it was basic information that I would send, formation documents of the companies. Information about the beneficial owner on these entities, information about the signer, IDs about the signer. Usually there's a bank-specific application that needs to be completed. That's really it. And then we started, when we saw there was a lot of account closures. Association with Google searches and articles about companies' websites, we started attaching a memo to each. Each account opening process that described, what is that entity, what does it do, who their clients are. Their relationship, if any, with Guo, Miles Guo. And some of the missions or services these companies offer.
You mentioned that you needed to collect documents and information to submit with account openings. From whom, if anyone, did you gather that information and those documents?
Usually the in-house attorneys, Yvette would direct them to give me information about the entity. Max had some formation documents for companies that were established before, and that's it.
What are some of the banks at which you opened accounts when you were working for Crane?
Signature Bank, the Bank of Princeton, First Bank in Puerto Rico, First Republic Bank. Israel Discount Bank, I think City National, and Medici in Puerto Rico.
How, if at all, did you choose which bank to contact to open accounts?
Either I knew the relationship managers, the business relationship managers, and I would contact them. Or I'd have a warm introduction by someone that knew a relationship manager. That's really it.
Can you describe what you mean by warm introduction?
So someone, let's say, for example, works at Israel Discount Bank that knows someone at another bank, they would tell them. They'll introduce me to them and I'll start conversation. Letting them know that I have an opportunity to open an account for a business, send them the formation documents. Tell them what kind of account it's going to be, and then that's a warm introduction.
And why, if at all, did you open accounts at various different banks?
'Cause accounts were getting closed, and then I wanted to also hedge that account closure. And usually if, let's say, there's one signer that is on one entity and multiple entities on one bank, they'll close all the accounts, so by opening in different banks. Hedging basically one account to be active at a certain point.
And who, if anyone, decided who would be the authorized signers on each of the bank accounts that you assisted in opening?
Yvette was telling me who was gonna be the signer on some companies. Some companies had a UBO or an owner listed on the formation documents, and if they're still available and there, they would be a signer.
Did you also open bank accounts under the name of Crane, your company?
Yes, I did.
At what banks?
Citibank only.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could please pull up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit BR 1511. And we can zoom in on the top portion. Mr. Khaled, what kind of document is this?
It's a business deposit account application for Citibank.
And what is the business name, looking on the top left here?
Crane Advisory Group LLC.
And in the middle, what is listed as the annual gross revenue for Crane Advisory Group on this application?
500,000.
And next to that, the annual net profits?
250,000.
Just up and to the right slightly, what is the business start date for Crane Advisory Group?
September 24th, 2020.
And then looking down, there's a primary contact name listed. Whose name is there?
That's my name, Haitham Khaled.
And the physical address that's associated with Crane in this bank application?
That's One World Trade Center, 85th floor, New York, New York. Down.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Ms. Loftus. We can take that. I want to look through a couple of the other applications for bank accounts that you assisted in opening. Ms. Murray said, if we could please publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit BR 371. Zoom in on the top portion, please. Mr. Khaled, what is the institution name associated with this account agreement?
Golden Spring, New York Limited.
And what is the address listed for Golden Spring?
162, East 64th Street, New York, New York.
Is that the address of the townhouse?
Yes.
Looking down at the owner/signer information listed here, what name is listed on this account?
Yangping Wang, Yvette.
And what mailing address is associated with Yvette on this account opening document?
188, East 64th Street, New York, New York, 10065.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can we take that down and put up Government Exhibit BR 374, which is in evidence? Again. Zoom in on the top portion, please. What is the institution name for this document, Mr. Khaled?
Hudson Diamond NY, LLC.
Are you familiar with that entity?
Yes.
What is it, or what was it at the time?
I believe a holding company for an asset.
What is the address listed for Hudson Diamond on this account agreement?
162, East 64th Street, New York.
And again, that's the townhouse?
Yes.
The owner/signer name here?
Yangping, Yvette, Wang.
And the mailing address, is it the same mailing address we saw on the prior document?
Yes.
Who was listed as Yvette's employer?
Golden Spring, New York LLT, Limited.
Ms. Murray said, and Ms. Loftus, can we please pull up BR 375? Zoom in on the top, including the date on the right, if we could. Please. Thank you. Same questions, Mr. Khaled. What is the institution name listed here?
Lamp Capital LLC.
What is the address listed for Lamp Capital?
667, Madison Avenue, 4th floor, New York, New York.
From your time working at Crane, are you familiar with that address?
No. This address is a virtual address.
And who is listed as the owner/signer for Lamp Capital on this account agreement?
Daniel Podhasky.
What is the description of Lamp Capital a couple of lines down in the owner/signer information? Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could highlight that, please.
No, that's...
Do you see the highlighted portion, Mr. Khaled?
Yeah. That's previous financial institution.
And then what is the description that is included in the account agreement?
Newly established company.
And what's the date of this account agreement?
September 10th, 2020.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can we please pull up BR 372, which is in evidence? Focusing on the top half again, please. Let's start with the date this time. What's the date of this account agreement?
September 22nd, 2020.
What is the institution listed here?
Greenwich Land LLC.
And the address listed for Greenwich Land?
6067, Madison Avenue, 4th floor, New York, New York.
Is that the same virtual office address that we saw associated with Lamp Capital?
Yes.
And the owner/signer here, same individual who was on the Lamp Capital account agreement?
Yes, Daniel Podhasky.
Looking down at the employer listed for Daniel Podhasky, what employer is listed here?
Lamp Capital LLC.
Ms. Murray said, you can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Thank you. What type of company was Lamp Capital?
It was a company that pays payments on behalf of all other holding companies.
And when you say all the other holding companies, what are you referring to?
Greenwich also paid expenses for real estate properties, also paid expenses for a yacht, I believe. I don't know if there was a plane or something.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
I don't know if there was a plane, like a private plane, or it was just paying expenses.
And whose expenses, if any, were paid for by these holding companies you're discussing?
Guo family.
What type of company was Greenwich Land?
A holding company.
What assets, if any, did Greenwich Land hold?
I think it was a home in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Who, if anyone, lived at that home?
Miles Guo.
Mr. Khaled, you've mentioned a company called G Clubs. What is G Clubs?
G Clubs was a membership company that was going to offer member benefits.
When was G Clubs established?
I think it was September 2020 as well. That's G Club Puerto Rico was established at that time.
How did you become aware of G Club?
In my trip in Puerto Rico.
When did you go to Puerto Rico?
September 2020.
What was the purpose, if any, of that trip to Puerto Rico in September 2020?
So Crane was looking at, like I said, establishing a financial institution in the US, and we realized, after talking to several law firms, consultants, that mission is going to be very lengthy and just a lengthy process to get approved in the US, on US soil. There was a concept called international financial institutions. And that is a concept of financial structure in Puerto Rico only, which is a bank license in Puerto Rico, so we went, myself and Victor, to explore getting a license there. We were told by attorneys that it's a shorter, more lenient process. So we went to Puerto Rico to meet with the attorneys that are going to apply for that license and help us set it up.
In advance of your trip to Puerto Rico with Victor, what conversations, if any, did you have? Just about attempting to buy a bank license?
Ms. Shrofa said, Objection, Your Honor. It assumes facts not in evidence or facts elicited from this witness, and it's leading.
The court said, you can ask whether he had any conversations.
Yes, I did.
In advance of your trip to Puerto Rico. Did you have any conversations with anyone about the purpose of that trip?
Yes.
With whom did you speak about the purpose of that trip?
Spoke to Yvette about the purpose, also spoke to Victor Serda and Miles Guo.
Can you describe what conversations you had with Yvette in advance of that trip about going down to look into a bank license?
Victor suggested that, brought up that idea with me to Yvette, and she welcomed it. She was like, "You guys go and see what you can accomplish."
What about Miles Guo? What conversations, if any, did you have with Miles Guo in advance of that trip to Puerto Rico?
We're working towards a solution and we're advancing towards setting up a bank.
Who is William J.E.?
William J.E. was a banker that was introduced to me by Yvette.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can you please publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 103? Mr. Khaled, do you recognize this individual?
Yes.
Who is it?
William J.E.
Ms. Murray said, we can take that down. What, if anything, did Yvette tell you about William J.E. when she introduced you to him?
That he's a banker, has an investment company in UK, has a large team, successful. And he's a close associate to the family and the mission.
And when you say that William J.E. is a close associate to the family, what family referring to?
The Guo family.
And what mission are you referring to?
The anti-CCP mission.
What company or companies did William J.E. work for at that time?
I believe it was Hamilton.
Did there come a time when William became involved with your bank purchasing efforts?
Yes.
Around when was that?
I think it was May of 2021.
And what role, if any, did he have with respect to your efforts to purchase a bank?
Here, we identified a bank and he was doing due diligence on them. We presented. Miles, William and I presented a term sheet, and we were negotiating a purchase of Medici.
Mr. Khaled, during or after your trip to Puerto Rico in September 2020, did you get involved in establishing any businesses in Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Which businesses?
G Club Operation, G Fashion, G Music, and G News.
How, if at all, would you refer to that group of businesses?
Refer to them as G Series.
And what does the G stand for in each of the G Series entities?
I believe Guo.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can you please pull up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit SW 2032? And if we can go down and start at the beginning of this. First of all, Mr. Khaled, what type of document is this?
It's an email thread.
Ms. Murray said, so focusing there, Ms. Loftus, from high down to the bottom. If we could get the header information as well, though, please, from original message. Thank you. Who is this email from?
Deborah von Gonten.
Looking at the from line, if you could, who is it sent from?
Oh, from me at Crane.
And it was sent to whom?
It was sent to Deborah von Gonten, Bank of Princeton.
What is the subject line of this email?
Crane Advisory Group, referral.
Looking at the first paragraph of this email, it reads: the accounts for Lamp Capital and Greenwich should have a total of $11 million and we should be receiving a large payment to Greenwich for purchase a portfolio of properties in the amount of $28 million. Did you have a role in establishing the accounts at Bank of Princeton for Lamp Capital and Greenwich?
Yeah, as an introduction.
Do you know what portfolio properties, if any, this email is referring to?
Not really, no.
Ms. Murray said, if we could look at the next paragraph, please, Ms. Loftus. If you could read that for us, Mr. Khaled.
We have another client that has a banking relationship with Signature. They are a startup with international membership service for luxury living with approximately 1,600 members. Current balances are $15 million and we want to help them set up a bank account with Princeton as well. Can you please email me MMA rates available?
What is the date of this email?
October 21st, 2020.
The paragraph that you just read referencing a startup with international membership service. What company does that refer to?
G Club Operations.
At this time, October 21, 2020, who, if anyone, worked for G Clubs?
I think we had either 1 or 2 employees.
And at this time, October 21, 2020, approximately how much money did G Club have in its bank account?
I'm not sure exactly, but definitely over 15 million.
And Mr. Khaled, who, if anyone, told you that this is a description of what G Clubs offered? International membership services for luxury living?
It was Jessica, and it also was listed on the website of G Clubs.
And the 1,600 members reflected here, where, if anywhere, did you get that figure?
From Jessica.
Did you work at G Clubs?
No.
Ms. Murray said, if we could go up, Ms. Loftus, to page 2, please. Further up in the chain. And if we could focus on the email that starts with original message kind of in the middle of the page. What's the date of this email, Mr. Khaled?
October 30th, 2020.
And who sent it?
It's from me.
And is this to 2 individuals at Bank of Princeton?
Yes.
Looking at the body of the email here, it says, kindly see attached the completed application for a new account for G Club Operation LLC. Client needs 3 accounts for the company, 2 DDA, subscription and operations, and 1 MMA at a rate of 40% as agreed. Total deposit will be north of $10 million. What is a DDA account?
Demand deposit account.
And can you just explain what that means?
Oh, checking account.
And what is an MMA account?
Money market account, which is like a liquid savings account.
In the sentence that begins with please here. Please do let me know if anything is missing as we need to establish the account soon. What, if anything? Do you recall about urgency in establishing a G Club bank account at this time, October 30th, 2020?
I think the account at Signature was getting terminated, or closed.
And then you reference an individual in the next line or paragraph. It says comptroller of the company and signer Alex. To whom does that refer?
Alex Hadjikaralambus.
And what was his role?
Controller, but I believe for G Fashion.
And looking at the CC line of the email that you sent. Can you read the email address as that was sent to you?
Alex Hadjikaralambus.
And in brackets, the email address?
alexh@gclubs.com.
Ms. Murray said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could just go up a little bit further to the top of this email, please. Actually, nearly the top. The reference, our call this morning, from Mr. Khaled. What is the date of this email, Mr. Khaled?
October 30th, 2020.
The email reads, reference our call this morning. Please see attached the second ID Yvette. You can use either one. What Yvette does this refer to?
Yvette Wang.
And why, if at all? Were you providing Yvette Wang identification to Bank of Princeton in connection with the opening of a G Club's account?
She was going to be a signer because Alex was new.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, we can take that down. And can we please pull up GXSW 2005, which is in evidence? Focus on the top through to the signature block here. Mr. Khaled, what type of document is this?
It's an email.
From whom?
From Dominic Chechili.
Where did Dominic Chechili work?
Signature Bank.
What's the subject of this email?
Follow up on G Club.
And what day was it sent?
October 13th, 2020.
Is that approximately several weeks before the Bank of Princeton email chain we just looked at?
Yes.
And generally speaking, what did this email from Dominic Chechili to you refer to?
It's an account opening email for G Club.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, we can take that down and put up Government Exhibit SW 2021, please, in evidence. And let's focus on the top part again. What's the date of this email, Mr. Khaled?
October 20th, 2020.
And this is from an individual at Signature Bank to you, is that correct?
Yes.
There's an attachment. Ms. Murray said, if we could go to the next page, please, Ms. Loftus. And focus in on the actual text. To what entity is this letter addressed?
To G Club Operations LLC.
And what is the physical address listed for G Club Operations LLC?
590, Madison Avenue, 21st floor, New York, New York.
Is that the same virtual office address that we saw in Government Exhibit SW 2009?
I believe so.
And can you read the body of this letter, please, starting with, this letter?
This letter is to confirm that an account has been opened for G Club Operations LLC. Currently they have $39,208,081.06 SIC on deposit as of today.
And if you could just read that dollar amount again. I think you might have inverted two of the numbers.
$39,208,018.06.
Ms. Murray said, and Ms. Loftus, could we please take this down and put up Government Exhibit SW 2030? If we could zoom in on the top portion of this. What is the date of this? First of all, Mr. Khaled, what type of document is this?
It's an email from Dominic to Che Chili to me.
What's the date?
October 28, 2020.
Approximately 2 weeks after the account opening email from Mr. Che Chili to you?
Yes.
What is the subject line of this email?
G Club's membership request for documentation.
And can you read the body of this email, please?
This breaks my heart to have to send. As discussed, attached is the letter for G Club and G Fashion. I'm sending it to you to give to Yvette as you see fit because I know this is a very sensitive subject. Please let me know if you would like me to call Yvette to discuss or if you think it's better I do not. Also, we have 2 wires requested to be returned. I will have them returned now and will send you the wire info in a separate email.
Ms. Murray said, we can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Mr. Khaled, did you also assist in forming businesses in New York in the fall of 2020?
I believe just Lexington Properties.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can we please pull up Government Exhibit SW 2002? And if we could zoom in from the top portion down to the item number 2 in the middle of the page. Mr. Khaled, what type of document is this?
It's an email.
And looking starting in the middle here, from Scanlon, Courtney, who is that email sent to?
It's sent to Daniel Podhasky.
What was Podhasky's role?
He was an in-house attorney.
Do you recognize the email domain for Daniel Podhasky?
Yes.
What is it?
Golden Spring, New York, US, which is for Golden Spring.
And in this email, if you look at the message to Daniel Podhasky, it reflects 20 entities. Looking at the first, the Delaware Corporation. What is the name of that entity and who is the sole stockholder listed?
Infinity Treasury Management Incorporated. Sole stockholder is Mileson Guo.
And then the second entity that's listed?
Lamp Capital LLC. Sole member is Infinity Treasury Management Incorporated.
And on what date does Mr. Podhasky send this to you?
September 9, 2020.
What is the email domain associated with your email address on this email?
gtv.org.
Ms. Murray said, all right, Ms. Loftus, we can take that down. Mr. Khaled, I believe that you mentioned that you prepared certain summaries of the different entities for use in, among other things, submitting to banks?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection. Objection to the testifying.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Khaled, what documents, if any, did you submit to banks in connection with your work for Crane?
At account opening, we submitted summaries of what the company does for the G series. And then we created one for each entity, basically telling them what the company is all about, address, ownership structure, any association with promoters, some of the services that each company offers, and the mission.
And what was the source of the information that you included in those summary documents?
Some were provided by in-house attorneys about the companies, some were from Wikipedia. And some information was from Yvette, just discussions as well.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can you please publish Government Exhibit SW 2040? Focus on the top. Mr. Khaled, this is an email from you to an email address roman@fundingvictory.com. Do you know who uses that email address?
Yes.
Who is that?
It's Roman Yagudarev.
And who is Roman Yagudarev as was relevant to your work at Crane during this time period, December 2020?
He was just a contact and a friend that I knew.
There's a subject of this email. What is the subject?
Milligram.
And the title of the attachment?
Milligram.docx.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could go down now to the attachment, please. Mr. Khaled, what does MG refer to in that subject line and in that attachment title?
Miles Guo.
Ms. Murray said, if we could focus, Ms. Loftus, just on the top portion for a moment, the quote. And then the first paragraph. Mr. Khaled, what is this?
It's an intro.
Who wrote this?
My assistant Maya.
What was the purpose of this document?
To give a preview of the mission.
The mission of what?
Anti-CCP.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom out of that. And focus on the bottom portion, from G clubs down to the bottom. Mr. Khaled, there's a description here of G clubs. Who, if anyone, provided that description?
Jessica, in-house attorney. She was in charge of all G Club. And this information was also, I believe, on the website.
And looking at the portion that starts with the underlying services being offered. What services does it indicate were offered at the time of this email, December 2020?
Multilingual concierge and translation services. Booking and discount on luxury consumer products in the U.S. Sourcing professional services in the U.S. for Chinese descendants. Hosting an annual summit for Chinese professionals and entrepreneurs with keynote speakers and empowering events. Education services and representation of Chinese students attending higher education in the U.S. Medical care services for high-net-worth Chinese individuals in the U.S. Temporary housing and travel arrangements domestically in the U.S.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, could we take that down and put up Government Exhibit SW 2042? Focus on the top portion. Mr. Khaled, what's the date of this email?
December 8, 2020.
And the subject?
G-Series.
Who is it addressed to?
Miguel Santin.
And who are some of the people who are copied on the CC line here?
Ross Heinemeier, Alex Hadjikaralambus, ZU.
Continued on next page.
To your understanding at this time December 2020, did Ross Heinemeier work for G Clubs?
No.
What entity, if any, did he work for?
The Rule of Law Foundation.
And in this email it starts with, as a promise. Please find attached a detailed description of what the G companies offer and inception. We also describe the information about the promoters of the brand. As mentioned to you, they are hired only to promote and bring in subscribers. They're not owners, nor are they in management position. Solely as promoters because of their following. Who, if anyone, were you referring to as promoters of the G company's brand?
Miles Guo.
Why, if at all, did you indicate that the promoters are not owners and nor in management positions?
Cause that will create an issue with opening up the account if the name is Googled and they have a direct management or position in the company or ownership.
And can you just clarify a bit what you mean by that? If what name is Googled it would create what kind of an issue?
Say if Miles Guo's name is directly associated with the ownership of the G entities. And if the name is Googled or put on OFAC, that will jeopardize the possibility of opening up the account at the bank.
At this time period December of 2020. Generally speaking, what were your duties and responsibilities with respect to banking relationships?
In December, my focus was supposed to be opening up a real financial institution or a virtual bank. That was the two projects I was working on.
And in this description regarding the promoter Miles Guo not being in a management position. Based on your experience at this time working for Crane, was that a true statement?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the form of the question.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
No, it was not.
What was inaccurate about that statement?
Miles Guo was involved with the creation of the companies and the day-to-day operation.
Why did you lie to First Bank PR in this email?
To increase the chances of them approving the account to be opened and the name not being associated with any OFAC or Google or public searches that will have either the compliance or account opening team refuse the account. To increase their chance of opening it.
There's an attachment to this particular email. Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll down, please. What's the date at the bottom of this G-series summary, Mr. Khaled?
October 2020.
Zoom in a little bit more actually. Read that date again for us, please, sir.
I'm sorry, December 2020.
If we could go down a couple of pages. I think it's page 6, if we could pause there. Focus in. Ms. Loftus, on who is Miles Guo? Mr. Khaled, who wrote this description of Miles Guo?
That was probably from the Wikipedia page.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the probably and move to strike.
The court said, so don't say what's probable or what you're guessing at. Only say what you absolutely know.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Who wrote this description of Miles Guo?
Maya Forwas.
Did you personally verify any of this information in this description about Miles Guo?
No.
If we can zoom out of that, please, Ms. Loftus. If we could focus on the top portion behind the movement. That paragraph. Looking at the second sentence here, Mr. Khaled. It says, Miles Guo / Guo was sought out as the brand ambassador, major promoter. As his powerful voice for hope and freedom resonates with the people. Based on your experience working at Crane. Is this an accurate statement of Miles Guo's relationship with the G-series?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection. Objection to the form of the question itself.
The court said, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Mr. Khaled, based on your work at Crane, do you have an understanding of what relationship, if any, Miles Guo had with the G-series brand?
Ms. Shrofa said, same objection, Your Honor.
The court said, this is a question that you may answer.
He was definitely part of the setup.
Can you explain what you mean by the setup?
He was not sought out for. He was the person that the G-series and the G entities were created with him, with his involvement.
Ms. Loftus, if we could take this down and put up Government Exhibit SW 2050. Mr. Khaled. What's the date of this email?
January 6, 2021.
Who sent it?
Maya Forwas.
And who was Maya at the time?
She was my assistant. But she also did some work for the other entities in the building in the townhouse.
Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll down to the attachment that's Saraca.pdf. Looking at the bottom right here. Mr. Khaled, what's the date of this document?
January 20th, 2021.
If we could go to the next page. Focus in on the overview here, please, Ms. Loftus. Could you read the first sentence under the overview for this Saraca summary, please?
Hudson Diamond Holding Incorporated is a BVI. Is a business company and legal entity holding assets on behalf of Miles Guo's family.
Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom out of this. I'd like to put up side by side this exhibit, which is SW 2050 at page 3, and SW 2051 at page 3, please. And looking on the right, SW 2051. If we could zoom in on that same top paragraph, please, Ms. Loftus, on the right side as well. Mr. Khaled, this is from 2051. Can you read what the lead-in paragraph reads in this Saraca summary document?
Saraca Media Group Incorporated. Saraca is a holding company established to help manage cross-border activities, business and financial affairs. The main purpose of establishing this structure is to manage real estate, trust and succession planning. Cross-border investments, joint ventures, listings and corporate group structuring.
Thank you. Ms. Loftus, we can zoom out of both of those. If we could focus on the organizational chart on the bottom of each, please. In the first document that we looked at. Mr. Khaled, what is kind of the ultimate parent company that's listed?
Hudson Diamond Incorporated, BVI.
Just one at a time is fine, Ms. Loftus. That's from 2050 that we're looking at. Hudson Diamond Holding BVI. What company is underneath it?
Saraca Media Group.
And what companies are listed beneath that?
GTV Media Group Incorporated, G News Media Group Incorporated, G Fashion Media Group Incorporated, G Live LLC and G Posts LLC.
Looking on the farthest left side, there's kind of a line up from GTV Media Group. Do you see that?
Yes.
What information is reflected there in this organizational chart?
Less than 49% is outside shareholders.
And then looking at the other line that goes into GTV Media Group here. What percentage is indicated from Saraca Media Group Incorporated?
51%.
Ms. Loftus, we can take down 2050. Let's focus on 2051. Same thing. Just the organizational chart through to the bottom. In this version of the Saraca summary, Mr. Khaled. Who is listed at the top of the organizational chart?
Guo.
Do you know who that is?
That's Miles Guo.
What relation, if any, is Miles Guo to Miles Guo?
His son.
Looking at the organizational flow here, moving left from GTV Media Group. What's reflected there in the org chart?
Outside shareholders $330 million raised in a private placement with non-owning more than 10%.
Ms. Loftus, we can take that down now. Are you familiar with an entity called Fiesta Property Development?
Yes.
What is it?
To my knowledge, it's a real estate holding company in the UK.
And who, if anyone, do you know to be associated with Fiesta Property Development?
Howran he.
Who is Howran he?
He was the name was introduced to me as the ultimate beneficiary holder for G Club operation.
Did you ever meet Howran he?
No.
Did you ever speak with Howran he on the phone or by video chat?
No.
Did you ever communicate with Howran he in the course of your work with Crane?
Maybe a few times by email.
Ms. Loftus, can you please pull up Government Exhibit GC 500? We can start down near the bottom. For this first email, Mr. Khaled, you're copied on this, correct?
Yes.
What's the date of this email?
January 18th, 2201.
Who sent it?
Christina Schatz.
Looking at the from line, if you could, who is the sender?
From Alex Hadjikara Lambus.
And it goes to two individuals at what financial institution?
Christina Schatz at Morgan Stanley. Elizabeth Burstler at Morgan Stanley.
What's the subject line of this email?
Wire Transfer G Club Operations, LLC.
And the body of this email indicates the scheduling of a transfer on January 19, 2021. From an account ending in 8564, which is described in the parenthetical as ADP and expenses. What does ADP stand for?
It's a payroll company.
And then in the description of the wire here. What is the amount listed of the outgoing wire from the ADP payroll and expense account?
$1 million.
And the beneficiary account name?
Fiesta Property Developments Limited.
Ms. Loftus, if we could scroll up this chain, please, and stop there, please. There's an email in the middle from Elizabeth Burstler. This is an email from Elizabeth Burstler to Alex H. What is the body of this email?
Can you give brief explanation purpose of this wire?
And zooming out, Ms. Loftus, and continuing up, please. The top email here into the second one. So January 20th, 2021. At 9:15 a.m. Alex forwards this email to you. What does he write to you?
Can you please advise how to best respond?
And what is your response to him?
I got it. I will prepare a response. Just spoke to Christina. They just want to keep it in the file.
Mr. Khaled, why if at all, Alex H. The controller of G Club asking you to prepare a response regarding this G Club wire?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection. I think the question should go to Alex H.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Khaled, what understanding, if any, did you have of why Alex H. forwarded this email to you?
He wanted to run the response to be a proper response to the bank in order not to jeopardize the relationship and account status.
To your understanding, how at all could a response to this inquiry jeopardize the account status?
Based on the KYC and the account opening approval. The G Club operations account at Morgan Stanley was going to be used for payroll and anything directly associated with G Club expenses.
And at this time, January 2021. Did you have an understanding of the purpose of the wire to Fiesta Property Development?
Not really, no.
Ms. Loftus, if we could pull up GC 508, please. Mr. Khaled, focusing on the top email here. This is from you. What's the subject line of this email?
Wire transfer G Club Operations LLC.
Who is it sent to and who is copied?
It was sent to Alex Hadji Caralambus, copied to Jessica Mastro Giovanni.
What role, if any, did Jessica Mastro Giovanni have?
She was the in-house attorney for G Club entities.
Looking at the body of this email, the first paragraph it reads, this transfer was initiated from G Club Operations LLC to Fiesta Property Developments Limited, a real estate holding company owned by Mr. He in the UK. Same owner of G Club's Operations, LLC. For a possible down payment on a property they plan to purchase for a total of $10 million. Mr. Khaled, where, if anywhere, did you get the information that's in that paragraph?
Jessica.
Do you have an understanding of what property, if any, Fiesta Property planned to purchase?
No.
Do you have any personal knowledge whether that information is accurate?
No.
Looking at the second paragraph it reads, the transaction is recorded with an internal loan agreement from the lender G Club Operation, LLC, to the borrower of Fiesta Property, LLC, for the amount of $10 million with a repayment plan. If they need the loan agreement, we can present it in the future. Where, if anywhere, did you get the information in that paragraph?
Jessica.
At the time that you wrote this email, do you recall whether you had seen the loan agreement that's referenced here?
I don't recall, no.
Why, if at all, did you send this draft email to Alex H?
In order to forward to the bank.
What is your understanding, if any, of why Jessica Mastro Giovanni provided this information about Fiesta Property Development?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Why, if at all, did you consult Jessica Mastro Giovanni for information about this wire transfer?
Because I wanted to reply to the bank with something that she knew about.
Do you recall whether you contacted Mr. He about this wire transfer?
No.
Why not?
Cause the protocol was Jessica was in between us, me and Howard He, if we needed any information.
Ms. Loftus, can we take that down, please, and go to Government Exhibit GC 501? If we could scroll down a bit. Please. They're on the email that starts at the bottom of the page here from Alex H., Mr. Khaled. Do you see the last two paragraphs of this email from Alex H?
Yes.
And what is the date of this email?
January 25th, 2021.
Alex H. sent it to the two individuals at Morgan Stanley, is that correct?
Yes.
Who's copied here?
Me.
What is the amount of this wire transfer from G Club Operations, LLC?
$5 million.
To what beneficiary account?
Fiesta Property Developments, Limited.
Now looking at the last two paragraphs, do you recognize the content of those paragraphs that Alex H. submitted to the bank?
Yes.
Is that the same text and description that you provided in the email we just looked at in Government Exhibit GC 500?
Yes.
Ms. Loftus, can we please now look at Government Exhibit BR 1506? What's the date of this email? Focus on the top for a moment.
March 24th, 2021.
And the subject line?
Wires to Fiesta Property Development, January-February 2021.
Looking at the 3 wires that are listed here. What are the dates and the amounts of those wires to Fiesta Property Developments?
January 21st, 2021, 734,000 sterling pounds. January 27th, 2021, 3,660,000 sterling pounds. February 4th, 2021, 2,932,000 sterling pounds.
We can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Mr. Khaled. After you assisted in opening bank accounts for these G-series entities, what role, if any, did you have in maintaining those accounts?
I was really the point of contact between them.
In communications with the banks about these accounts, how, if at all, did you hold yourself out?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. In communications with the banks about these accounts, how, if at all, did you hold yourself out? What association, if any, did you indicate you had with the entities?
I introduced myself as a consultant to these entities.
In communications with the bank, what, if anything, did you disclose to the banks about Crane's relationship with the G entities?
That they are my clients.
Was that entirely truthful?
No.
What was dishonest about that?
Crane was related to these entities, and I was working for these entities.
In bank communication and in documents that you filed, what address did you list as the business address for Crane?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection, asked and answered several times.
The court said you may answer.
One World Trade Center, 85th floor, New York, New York.
At the time that you submitted that business address to the banks, where were you in fact working?
At the townhouse at 162, East 64th Street.
Why, if at all, did you not list your actual office address on documents and communications you submitted to the banks?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the form of the question.
The court said you may answer.
To distinguish the Crane Company from the negative information that Saraca and GTV and the SEC articles that listed Golden Spring. And there's some indication to the 162 East 64th Street address.
In addition to banking relationships, Mr. Khaled, did you do additional work related to these entities related to your time at Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Loftus, if you could pull up, please, SW 2083. If we could focus first on the bottom email, please. Mr. Khaled, what's the date of this email?
May 7th, 2021.
Who sent it?
Joe W. at Guo Media.
Who is Joe W.?
One of the techs that worked in the building as well with us.
When you say the building, what building are you referring to?
Townhouse at 162, East 64th Street.
What was Guo Media?
Media company.
Whose media company?
Guo.
And who is this email addressed to?
To me and Anthony Di Battista.
Who is Anthony Di Battista?
He is also the head controller for Lexington Properties. He was in charge of payroll expenses and other things, financial.
Focusing on the first sentence of this email, it reads, we are about to launch GTV project. Similar as Twitter. We want to build a fundraising feature on this platform. At this time, May of 2021. Had you heard of GTV?
Not really, no.
Ms. Loftus, if we can zoom out of that and look at the top portion of this email chain. There's a response from Mr. Di Battista.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the testifying. If there's a question, she can ask it.
The court said, if you would just refer him to which email you want him to comment on.
Ms. Murray said, will do, Your Honor. If you can focus on the very top email, Mr. Khaled, sent from Joe W. What date was that sent?
May 7th, 2021.
And to whom was it sent?
Anthony DiBattista and myself.
What's the domain of the email address associated with Anthony DiBattista?
GTV.org.
And which of your email addresses was this sent to?
Crane Advisory Group.
Can you read the text of the email?
This is a fintech-related question. Miles wants to know whether we can do it. I'm tagged. What do you think from your side? Best Joe.
Who do you understand Miles to refer to in this email?
Miles Guo.
Thanks you, Ms. Loftus. Can you take this down?
The court said, "Could you explain, if you would?"
Ms. Murray said, "Put it back up again, Ms. Loftus." That was SW 2083.
The court said, "If you would highlight that upper portion, can you explain what is meant there by it, Khaled?"
The witness said, "There's 2 people on the email. They're specific. He wants me to answer that."
The court said, "In other words, that reference that is highlighted in blue is merely referring to you. It's not referring to some other site or method of communication."
The witness said, "Yes."
The court said, "Okay, go ahead."
By Ms. Murray.
Just a clarifying question on that, Mr. Khaled. Based on looking at this email, do you have an understanding of whether there's a hyperlink embedded within that the judge was asking about?
I don't believe so. From my understanding, it's gonna be, if you click it, it would go to an email to me.
So your understanding is that hyperlinks to your email, is that correct?
Correct.
Ms. Loftus, can we just put up Government Exhibit SW 2061, please? If we could focus on the top 2 emails in this chain. Looking at the second email, Mr. Khaled, who is this from on February 1st, 2021?
Alex Hadjikara Lambus.
Who did he send it to?
Edward Boyle from Medici Bank.
If we can zoom out of that and go further down the chain, please, bottom of the first page. In this email, starting with the paragraph or reading the paragraph, one last question. Can you read that, please? Mr. Khaled. This is from Ed Boyle to Alex H.
One last question. Can you please confirm if Miles Lawengui Guo Kwok has any decisive control over G Club BVI or its parent, Jovial, or its parent Stichting Juzaim? A simple reply statement to this email is sufficient.
Ms. Loftus, if we can zoom out and go to the very top of this email chain. What does this reflect of this email chain, Mr. Khaled?
Same thing, Alex sending an email to me with the thread of the question.
And then going to the attachment to this email, Ms. Loftus, on page 2, please, focusing on the text. What is the first sentence here in this document that was attached to the email chain?
Miles Guo does not have any decisive control over G Club BVI or its parent, Jovial, or its parent Stichting Juzaim.
And I'll just read the beginning of the second paragraph. His presence on the website and social media only as G Club brand ambassador Miles Guo. Do you see that?
Yes.
Based on your experience working at Crane, do you believe that to be an accurate statement of Miles Guo's involvement with G Clubs?
Ms. Strofa said, "Your Honor, I have no objection to the question without the Beltline. There's no relationship between this employment at Crane and the remainder of the question. So that's my objection to the form."
The court said, "Do you want to come step up?"
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, "So I understand you to be asking the witness whether it is accurate that Mr. Guo does not have decisive control?"
Ms. Murray said, "Yes, Your Honor."
Ms. Strofa said, "I have no objection to that because she keeps saying, while you're working at Crane."
The court said, "Go ahead."
Ms. Strofa said, "He's not working at Crane. He's testified many times that Crane is like an entity he set up. He draws no salary from Crane. He makes no money from Crane, and it's not material to the question. She has a document. She wants to ask about the document. She can ask. I do have a secondary objection."
The court said, "I just want to get to the first part, the while working at Crane."
Ms. Murray said, "I was simply trying to place him in time, Your Honor, because I think it's relevant about time. I can just say at the time of this email. All I was trying to do is stage him on the time.
Ms. Shrofa said, there were a slew of questions while you were working at Crane. I objected. That was the reason for the objection, because he's not really working at Crane. And I don't know why the government keeps going back to Crane, so that was my objection. I also have a follow-up.
The court said. He identified it as the corporation that he founded.
Ms. Shrofa said, right, but he's never worked there. I have a corporation. I'll call it XXXXXX and family. I don't work there. I don't draw an income from there. How is it relevant to what I think of, let's say, these proceedings?
The court said. Perhaps the better question is when you were associated with Crane.
Ms. Murray said, I'm happy to establish if Ms. Schroff would like that Crane was a shell corporation.
Ms. Shrofa said, I think you've done that many times.
Ms. Murray said, he had an email address associated with Crane. He submitted documents.
Ms. Shrofa said, and you went over all of that in great detail as to why he had an email address. Which email address he used over and over again. Not just in your questions, but also in the looping and the relooping. This question can be asked without any reference to Crane, to which I would have no objection at all.
Ms. Murray said, happy to do that.
Ms. Shrofa said, my second objection, Your Honor, is I have no idea what it means when she's asking about control or degree of control. Those are technical terms.
The court said, but there's a quote that's not coming from the witness. There's a quote, and he's asked to give an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Guo had control, and so.
Mr. Kamraju said, the question is the quote itself, right, Your Honor?
The court said yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, if that's the question, decisive control.
The court said okay.
Ms. Shrofa said, we're going to stop at 2:45, right? I need a bathroom break, but I'm not going to ask you. I'm just going to go to 2:45.
The court said we have to stop at 2:45, yes.
Continued on next page. In open court, jury present.
The court said, please continue.
By Ms. Murray.
Ms. Loftus, if we can go to SW 2061 at page 2. Mr. Khaled, focusing on the first sentence. Do you believe that statement to be true?
No.
We can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Did there come a time when Crane accepted money on behalf of other individuals or entities?
Yes.
When did that first occur?
November 23rd, 24, something like that, of 2021.
At that time, November 2020, what agreement, if any, did Crane have to accept money from other entities?
There was no agreement in place.
Ms. Shrofa said, he said there was no agreement, Your Honor.
The court said. He said there's no agreement in place.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you.
How, if at all, did Crane come to accept money on behalf of others in November of 2020?
Yvette asked me that if I have an active account for Crane that she can send money from VIP clients to Crane.
What reason, if any, did Yvette give for asking you to accept money from others in the Crane accounts?
At that time it was just to have an active account, that was the request. Is there an active account for Crane to accept money?
What information, if any, did you provide to Yvette in response to her inquiry?
I told her yes. I have an account established for Crane at Citibank and I gave her the Citibank wiring instructions.
After that conversation, did there come a time when Crane's Citibank account started receiving incoming money?
Yes. I received it in November and then back again in December.
And approximately what volume of incoming money was coming into Crane's Citibank account at that time?
Initial transfer was couple of 100,000, I believe a little over $1 million in December.
After December of 2020, did Crane's Citibank account continue to receive incoming wires?
Yes.
Of what volume approximately?
I think we received about $30 or $40 million, not really sure the exact amount, but it was in that ballpark.
And when the money was coming into Crane's accounts in early 2021, what discussions, if any, did you have with Yvette about the source of those funds?
She said that it's investors' money for a new media company. And also she said that also G Club members that are VIP that are sending money.
Did there come a time when Yvette asked you to transfer the money in Crane's accounts to a different bank account?
What period of time?
Let's focus on March and April of 2201. Generally speaking, what was the volume of incoming funds into the Crane accounts during that period?
We had almost 1,000 wires that came in.
And approximately how much money was coming into Crane's accounts through those approximately 1,000 wires?
We had about $100 million.
What, if anything, did you do with the $100 million that came into Crane's account?
Just kept it, paid some expenses on what needed to be done for Crane in terms of rent. Other expenses for legal work. We also started creating a new entity as well. We paid some expense for that.
Approximately what proportion of the $100 million or so did you spend on the Crane expenses you described?
I don't have exact number. It's a very small amount.
What, if anything, happened with the remainder of the $100 million?
It was transferred to G Club account. And a portion was transferred to an attorney that represented G Club.
Mr. Khaled, focusing you on spring of 2021, did there come a time when you started recording phone calls?
Yes.
Why did you start recording phone calls?
I had concerns. I had over $100 million in a company that I owned individually. I wasn't getting clear information of where this money needs to go. There was now inconsistent people telling me what to do and giving me instructions that I never met before. Just concerns.
Can you describe what you mean and you say inconsistent people telling you what to do? To whom are you referring?
For example, William J.E. I was working with on establishing a bank all of a sudden knows about G Club and asking me to transfer money for G Club. Other individuals started getting on the phone with me telling me that we need to transfer money ASAP, rushing. And also the other concern was all this money that came in, 100 plus directly to G Club. And 100 million that was at Crane's account without really much services or anything about G Club is being done. Conflicting information.
And when did you start recording calls?
I think end of April, end of March, April, March.
Of what year?
2021.
And what was your motivation for recording phone calls?
I just wanted to protect myself down the line from any accountability in terms of what this money is for. Where is it going, etc.
What do you mean by protect yourself?
Legally, and document that this money is not, that I used or that other people know about it.
How, if at all, did you select which calls to record?
There wasn't really a science behind it. It was just random calls that are related to the transfer and request of transfer and what we were doing with this money. Just management calls that I can record.
Did you tell anyone else on the calls that you were recording them?
No.
Why not?
'Cause I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I wanted that information for myself.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, may I approach?
The court said you may.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, I'm handing the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit -1 Hong Kong dollar. Mr. Khaled, do you recognize the hard drive that's marked as Government Exhibit -1 Hong Kong dollar?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
It's my signature on it.
Did you review the contents of that hard drive?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, that hard drive contains exhibits that have been marked for identification as Government Exhibits 401 through 417 and their sub-exhibits. Mr. Khaled, are Government Exhibits 401 through 417 and their sub-exhibits audio files of the recordings that you made?
Yes.
Are those the recordings we've been discussing that you made of phone calls you had in 2021?
Yes.
Did you review the contents of Government Exhibits 401 through 417 and their subparts that are contained on that hard drive?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, at this time I would like to read a stipulation between the parties. This is Government Exhibit Stip 16. The parties stipulate and agree that in the below chart the exhibits listed under column A contain audio in English and/or foreign language. And the exhibits listed under column B are true and accurate transcriptions and translations of the audio contained in the exhibits listed column A. We would offer this exhibit, which is Government Exhibit Stip 16.
The court said, "No objection, correct?"
Ms. Shrofa said, "No, Your Honor. It's a stipulation."
The court said, "It is admitted."
Government's Exhibit Stip 16 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, "We can publish that, Ms. Loftus."
By Ms. Murray.
Looking at this stipulation. Column A lists certain government exhibits which are recordings and subparts of those government exhibits which are excerpts of recordings. Column B lists certain transcriptions and translations of those recordings. Your Honor, at this time, pursuant to the stipulation and pursuant to Mr. Khaled's authentication of the recordings, the government moves to admit Government Exhibits 404, 404-T, 405, 405-T, 406, 406-T, 408, 408-T, 409, 409-T, 411, 411-T, 412, 412-T, 413A, 413A-T and 417, 417T.
The court said, "No objection."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, we have no objection now, but we may raise an issue at sidebar or at the end of the day. I don't want to disrupt with another sidebar right now."
The court said, "They're admitted."
Government's Exhibits 404, 404-T, 405, 405-T, 406, 406-T, 408, 408-T, 409, 409-T, 411, 411-T, 412, 412-T, 413-A, 413-A-T and 417, 417-T received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor." Ms. Loftus, we can take this down. Each juror has a copy of the transcripts binder under their chairs. That contains the transcript of the recordings that were just admitted into evidence. So feel free to pick that up and follow along.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Just so the record is clear, they're not transcripts, right? It's just a transcription. The call is in English. It's a mix, right, of a translation and a transcription. I just wanted to be clear about that."
Ms. Murray said, "Yes, Your Honor. For clarity of the record, that is right. A majority of the calls are in English. Those are transcriptions. The portions of the calls are in Mandarin. Those are transcriptions and translations as indicated in the stipulation."
The court said, "So the transcriptions that are purely in English are just an aid to help you read along. But it is the actual recording which is in evidence, and so you should rely on what you're hearing. But the translations you must rely on. Go ahead."
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor." Ms. Loftus, if we could please pull up Government Exhibit 417-T. That's the first half in binder. Mr. Khaled. This is a transcription of one of the recordings that you made. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was the date of the phone call that is recorded at Government Exhibit 417?
April 28, 2021.
Who were the participants to that call?
Miles Guo, myself, Yvette, William J.E., Alex.
And focusing for a moment, Mr. Khaled, on the recording itself. Have you reviewed that recording of the call that took place on April 28, 2021?
Yes.
Do you have a recollection of that call or meeting?
Yes.
Were you physically present during that call?
No.
Can you describe for the jury how the various different participants participated in that call?
So Yvette and Alex were in the townhouse. Miles I couldn't see, but either voice or Zoom. William J.E. was a voice from the UK.
And what about you, sir? How did you participate?
I was at my house. I called into the call through Zoom.
Ms. Murray said, "Ms. Loftus, if we could please pull up 417. That's the audio of this meeting. We're going to start at the 3-minute and 25-second mark, which is page 4 of the transcription. Ms. Loftus. Before we start that, actually, just for clarity of the record. This version of Government Exhibit 417 contains captions that are overlaid on the audio. It's the same content that is reflected in the transcription that is 417T. We can go ahead and play it.
Media played.
Can you pause for a minute? Mr. Khaled. Do you recognize the voice that was associated with Guo in this transcription?
Yes.
Is that in fact Miles Guo?
Yes.
And the voice that just spoke, is that Yvette Wong?
Yes.
We can keep going, Ms. Loftus. Thank you.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, the portion of this next audio, did you hear that it didn't appear to be in English? We can continue playing for just a moment.
Media played.
Can you pause it, Ms. Loftus?
Yeah, that's not English.
Ms. Murray said, I just wanted to note for the record that in the transcription and translation. And this is indicated on the cover sheet. Words that are italicized are translations from the source language into English, here from Mandarin into English. Ms. Loftus, if we can go back a couple of seconds and just begin where Yvette starts speaking here.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, what 919 payments are you referring to in that portion of this conversation?
Incoming transfers to Medici account.
Which Medici account?
G Club account with Medici.
What role, if any, did Crane have with respect to those 919 payments?
For those payments, nothing.
Why, if at all, are you discussing those payments with Yvette and with Miles Guo?
Because I was getting that information from management of Medici. And I was helping Alex reconcile incoming funds.
What does it mean to reconcile the incoming funds?
On my side, just making sure that there's accountability on each account. What is the balances? The number of payments that came in, just balances and where the money is missing or is. Reconciling on the operation side was matching each wire to a G Club membership number.
And what is the purpose, if any, of doing that reconciliation?
To match a G Club membership to the incoming wire that came in. To activate a membership versus not activate a membership.
Ms. Loftus, if we could go to 7 minutes and 20 seconds, please. Start playing from here.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, on that question, so when can move to our bank account? Did you have an understanding of what bank account Miles Guo was referring to?
Medici, G Club account.
Ms. Murray said, all right. We can keep going.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, what did you understand to be the source of the $18.2 million that is being discussed here?
That's its members' money, but some of them did not mention G Club on their memo.
And when you say members, can you just clarify what you're referring to?
The G Club members.
What, if anything, is the problem with the members not mentioning G Club on their wire memos?
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
The court said, is there an issue?
Mr. Khaled, based on what we've listened to so far. Do you recall discussing whether it was problematic that there were some, I think they referred to as orphan wires?
Yes.
What did you understand orphan wires to refer to?
That it had no information to where it should go, the money. There's no ultimate beneficiary listed on the wire when going from one corresponding bank to another.
And why, if at all, would that be a problem in terms of moving money?
For operation-wise, if they have multiple accounts, they don't know where to send the money to. So it gets blocked. It gets in the middle, unless and until either someone opens up an investigation. And they send clarification to where the money should go, to what ultimate beneficiary it should go, account. The other problem is purpose. They cannot match it with either a reference number or anything. And that's a compliance issue as well.
Ms. Murray said, we can keep playing, Ms. Loftus. Thank.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, what, if anything, do you understand the reference to farm to mean there?
Congregation or union of different members.
And with respect to this money in particular coming in for G Club's memberships, what role, if any, did the farms have in the G Club member funds?
There were some large wires that came in from farms which were combination of multiple members pulled together for one transfer.
Can you describe what you mean by multiple members?
More than one G Club member or individual.
If we can keep playing, please, Ms. Loftus.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, do you understand the reference to Long Island?
Yes.
What is that a reference to?
David who lived in Long Island.
And the reference to Mountain of Spices Farm, do you recognize that reference?
No, just the company, no details.
What interaction, if any, did you have with Long Island David regarding these G Club member funds?
I had a few calls with Long Island David. He also supervised and helped gather KYC packages for the payment facilitation that we had between Crane and G Club.
Ms. Murray said, "We can keep going, Ms. Loftus." Thank you.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, putting you back into the time of this meeting April 28, 2021. Were you able to understand what Yvette and Guo were talking about when they were speaking Mandarin?
No.
Was there anyone translating for you?
No.
At any point during or after the meeting did Yvette or Guo explain to you what they had been discussing during the Mandarin portions of the meeting?
No, just the pauses and the translation.
We can keep going, Ms. Loftus. Thank you.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled, the reference to the principal, who is that referring to?
Miles Guay.
Ms. Murray said, "Probably a good time to stop here, Your Honor."
The court said, "Yes, we do have to stop now. It is 2:44. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't permit anyone to discuss the case with you. Do not read, listen to or watch anything from any source concerning anything touching on the subject matter of this trial. Have a good evening and I'll see you back ready to walk in the courtroom at 9:30 tomorrow morning."
Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, "Sir, you may step out. Don't discuss your testimony."
Witness temporarily excused.
The court said, "Is there anything before we reconvene tomorrow morning?"
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, I just wanted to make sure for the record that the English transcriptions, we would not agree that they would go back to the jury. I didn't want to raise that in the middle of the proceedings. I just want to make sure I preserve. We can deal with it later. We don't need to deal with it now. I just want to make sure my objection was preserved on that score."
The court said, "Your objection is that this aid should not go back to the jury. That's what your objection is?"
Ms. Shrofa said, "Yes, Your Honor. I don't have any objection to it being used as an aid. That's all."
Ms. Murray said, "Your Honor, the stipulation between the parties explicitly states that these are not aids. They are in fact evidence. It says that the exhibits listed under column B, which are the T exhibits, which are the ones we've introduced into evidence, are true and accurate transcriptions and translations of the audio contained in the exhibit listed under column A. And the predecessor paragraph indicates that column A contains audio in English and/or a foreign language."
The court said, "So typically a transcription in English is not considered evidence. The actual recording is considered evidence, and the transcription is considered an aid. As far as the translation, now that can constitute the evidence. And so if you want to revisit this tomorrow morning, we can do that. Have a good evening."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, I have one other issue to raise. At the sidebar, I used a relative's name in a hypothetical. May I have that X'd out of the transcript?"
The court said yes.
Mr. Finkel said, "Your Honor, one last thing just on logistics. Apologies. Given next week we're off on Wednesday. The government requests that the court consider, provided it's okay with the jury and Your Honor, that we extend the days of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday by 45 minutes. I'm sorry, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Friday."
The court said, "You're talking about this week or the following week?"
Mr. Finkel said, "Next week, the week where we're off on Wednesday. 2 reasons for that. 1, we're off on Wednesday, so we're missing a day, and we want to sort of catch up on some time. 2. As the government has indicated, we're running behind just for a variety of reasons. Some are in our control. Some not in our control. Some not in the party's control. And third, last week having the additional 45 minutes from the government's perspective. And I think from the court's perspective and the jury's perspective, the trial moved much more efficiently. Those 45 minutes are quite helpful. So we ask the court consider, provided it's okay with Your Honor and the jury, to extend next week 45 minutes each day.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, actually, we would object to that. It was a colossal hardship for us. The 9 o'clock time absolutely does not. The earlier start time does not work. We're happy to revisit this down the road. But the government is... I want to just remind the court. Originally, the government had an estimate. When this trial date was set, we asked for 2 extra weeks. The government objected, and we didn't have that time. This time has been set. We have other commitments. I especially have other commitments. And I don't think that is properly fair to those of us who are solo practitioners. It is a true hardship. So at least on my own behalf, and I have not consulted with anyone else, I would most respectfully ask the court not to do that.
The court said, I assume though that you don't have commitments other cases.
Ms. Strofa said, I do.
The court said, early in the morning?
Ms. Strofa said, I do.
The court said, you have to appear in court before you come to this courtroom?
Ms. Strofa said, I have prison calls. I have meetings that I have set up. And I have a child who's only home for the summer break. And I already missed a vacation with him because they wouldn't give me the 2 weeks extension. So, yes. For all those reasons, Your Honor, I would most respectfully ask you not to do that to us.
The court said, I'd like the government to make a more specific proposal and to discuss this with defense counsel.
Mr. Finkel said, absolutely. Of course, Your Honor, the government is fine extending the 30 to 45 minutes in the afternoon. We all have families. We all have other commitments. There are 3 law firms behind us. I'm sure they could figure it out. The alternative, unfortunately, Your Honor, is we're going to drag, especially if the defense has a 2 weeks defense case, quite deep into July. And so the government believes that extending the day by 45 minutes would be quite helpful. Candidly, it may make sense, and we could talk about this later, but it may make sense for there to be some full days. Assuming it's okay with Your Honor and the jury, just again to keep us on track.
The court said, it's something for me to consider, a regular day with an hour break between 1 and 2. So I'd like you all to discuss this because I do understand the need to have some additional time because we are behind. So please discuss this amongst yourselves. I would hope that you'd come back with a joint proposal. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Adjourned to June 11, 2024 at 9 a.m.